Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, March 6th. This is a work session and a joint meeting with the Board of County Commissioners and Open Space and Trails. This is Wednesday. Normally we have our regular meetings, but this week it's just a work session. Starting out at 12 o'clock right now. One, it's a lunch meeting, so if you don't mind watching us eat while we work, feel free to tune in. We're starting out with Roaring Fork Safe Passages and then the Brush Creek Park and Ride to Aspen Airport Business Trails, part of the joint meetings. I'd love to just jump in and get started. And
just check with Andorra and see if we're live.
Are we live yet? Oh, are we still waiting? Oh, that was we're live, but you're not.
Greg, you could do so much
Take
better.
two. All right. Okay, now this time with a little bit more gravitas.
Yes.
We've already had this presentation.
Zoom's frozen. Okay. Par for the course. Happens all the time. Nothing to see here, folks. And that concludes the important decision we've just made.
Sweet, I'm hungry.
Yeah, I know. Go get your lunch, Gary.
I can't
So
eat
tell me
until
when you guys are ready.
You don't want to see that.
Zoom's not responding, so we're going to give it another minute or two. Andorra, you've got us on. So we're on Grassroots, but we're not on Zoom. Is that right?
What do you need?
I think we have some Zoomers out there who'd like to join us.
Well, and they have to present.
Go ahead and have a present.
That's weird. I see all the participants.
I'm going to have lunch and then just let me know when to say something. Yeah, let's do it. Grassroots, we're going to break until we're back on with Zoom. Thanks.
Yes, Michael.
Okay, everybody, we're back. It's Wednesday, March 6th. We're back after a short technical issue. This is the joint meeting with Open Space and Trails. Up first, Roaring Fork Safe Passages. After that, Brush Creek Park and Ride. Gary Tenenbaum is here, and we also have Cecily D'Angelo and Julia Kinch from Safe Passages. Welcome, everybody, and let's go. This is going to be exciting.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm Gary Tenenbaum. I'm the director of Picken County Open Space and Trails. I'm here with Liza Mitchell from Open Space
Hi, Liza.
and Trails. And
again,
I'll let these guys introduce themselves in a minute, but what we're here today is for two things, is to give an update on where Roaring Fork Safe Passages is at. We have been heavily involved in not only the Roaring Fork Safe Passages, but the Watershed Biodiversity Initiative. As you guys know, we have funded over $200,000 to the Watershed Biodiversity Initiative, which gets us to connectivity issues, because that's one of the things they found through that study was there's some major connectivity issues, especially along Highway 82. And so Rolling Fork Safe Passages has been created out of the auspices of Watershed Biodiversity Initiative to look at Highway 82 and really determine what potential mitigation strategies could be used. And so today they're going to give an update on where they're at with that process, but we're also here with the budget supplemental to do stage 1 of the review, which will get us to obviously stage 2. Stage 1 informs stage 2. Stage 2, we could be back in September, looking at what they found in stage 1 and what potentially could be funded in stage 2. And so staff is supportive. We're partnering with the city of Aspen on this stage. And so we would be the two main funders. And, obviously this stretch is one that has a lot of city and county open space along it. And so we're interested to see what this study will find. And so I've already had a preview of this, but it's exciting, and it's also daunting because it is not an easy stretch of highway to look at and provide mitigation for. But with that, I'll turn it over to Julia or Cecily.
Thank you.
Let you get started. Hi, my name is Cecily D'Angelo. I'm the Executive Director of Roaring Fork Safe Passages, and we're really excited to be here today. Just to give a very quick brief history of the organization and why I started it. About 3 years ago, I read an article about how effective wildlife crossings and fencing was for preventing wildlife vehicle collisions. And when I read this, I was like, wow, this can reduce wildlife vehicle collisions by up to like 90%, over 90%. Why aren't we doing something about that in the Valley? This was, having grown up here, this is something I thought was just inevitable, and a part of living in the Valley was feeling the danger of driving on the highway and wondering if I was going to have a collision, but then also just seeing the tragedy of our wildlife being killed on the side of the road as well. And I spent a couple years wondering why and asking around, why isn't someone doing something about this in the Valley? And I eventually was put in touch with Tom Cardamone and learned about the Watershed Biodiversity Initiative, a project that he was at that point culminating, and realized that this really was the next step. And the reason that this project hadn't been taken on to date was that it does require an organization to hold all of the stakeholders, because it's an incredibly complex issue that involves a large number of stakeholders, be it a multi-county issue, cities, as you know, we've become very lucky to have partners over the last couple of years in the city of Aspen. We've worked alongside open space. But then you also have to involve some of the state stakeholders, being CPW, CDOT, and then private citizens are going to be involved. There's a large multitude of people that you really need to bring together, and agencies you need to bring together to make these projects viable, which is one of the reasons it hadn't been done to date. And at that point, I commenced this work under the umbrella of Watershed Biodiversity Initiative. They've sponsored us as a 501c3. And I'll just move to the next. And we really began tackling the issue of what we have in the Valley, which is from 2012 to 2021 in the Roaring Fork Valley, wildlife vehicle collisions were the #1 cause of crashes, accounting for 30% of the crashes on Highway 82 and 133. And just something to keep in mind as we're reporting the numbers to you guys today, that 2 to 4.
Now while we're eating.
That's 2 to 4 times?
The 2 to 4 times the number of animals are actually hit than are reported to to authorities. So a lot of the data that we're working with is actual crash numbers reported with police or sheriff. But the estimate is that there's 2 to 4 times the number of animals that are actually hit on an annual basis. And the cost estimate here in the Valley is roughly $5.2 million a year, and this accounts for, vehicle damage and wildlife loss, et cetera. Good question.
Yeah,
When we're talking about wildlife, what is our,
the animals that get reported and that also that you probably know cause the most damage to your vehicles or potential injuries to humans, those are your larger animals by and large. So it's predominantly deer. There are a lot of stretches that have quite a few elk hits in this particular value, but it's predominantly deer, some elk, occasional bear, coyote, those kinds of species. But
Moose.
2 to 4 times that?
so that doesn't even
Larger
include.
animals, it's
It
not-
is.
No. Yeah.
It doesn't even include any kinds of birds, insects, and sort of the impacts that has on ecosystems and patterns.
Maybe.
Occasionally, I mean, those don't get unless somebody flips their car because they swerve to avoid a skunk. That's probably not going to get counted. Yeah.
Lions too.
Yep. Lions do get hit as well.
And so this number is probably wildly low, but that's just what we have
And
documented.
the example you might give is somebody hits an elk, the elk isn't killed, but wanders off and dies half a mile away. And so
That's
they don't
not
have
accounted for. Yeah.
That's not accounted for.
Well, and I would say that even some of the elk that we are seeing on the road are also not accounted for. So it depends on the systems for documenting this are getting better and better, but they're still undercounted, even the ones we're seeing.
Great, thank you. Is that answers it?
Just to give you a quick, it's been 18 months since inception of Roaring Fork Safe Passages. As I mentioned, fiscally sponsored by the Watershed Biodiversity Initiative. So far, we've spent $30,000 on a prioritization study, which was conducted by Julia, and then we had a few small startup costs. We've been incredibly lucky to be the 2-time recipient of the Ski Co-Environment Foundation grant, and we actually were invited for our first application. They were the first money in. Recently, we were awarded the Thrift Shop grant, and we have a large social media and newsletter following, just demonstrating that we have a large amount of public support. And in 2025, we're also applying to a number of local grants. I'm going to turn it over to Julia. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm going to continue. Really quickly, one of the important things that we can do as an organization locally is advocate and seek funding with the state and then ultimately with federal funds as well. And the reason being that this is so important is that CADOT has a backlog of projects, and many successful crossing projects do have local advocacy and philanthropy behind them. And when local communities initiate like some of the earlier stages of these projects, often state and federal funds become more accessible, and certainly this shortens the timeline for these types of projects. These are a few examples of this where there was initial funding from both local philanthropy and from local advocacy groups, counties, cities, and ultimately there were projects that the Annenberg Wallace project is in the middle of being built currently. I suspect that'll be done by the end of the year. The Highway 9 project was completed 5 years ago?
2016.
Yeah. And then the I-70 Eastvale Pass is currently seeking funding, and Julia runs the nonprofit that is involved with that.
All right. So we're gonna continue with a little bit of an update on the work that we previously presented last fall of our prioritization study for the Roaring Fork watershed. And the purpose of this was to first identify, okay, sure, we've had all these anecdotal experiences. We know animals get hits on some of these roads, but we wanted to have a systematic and transparent process where we're bringing together the available data sources and expertise in order to identify which are the highest priority areas. And if we're going to invest in any kind of mitigation, whether that's wildlife crossings or other types of mitigation, that we're making those investments where they're going to have the greatest benefits for reducing collisions with wildlife and for improving permeability for wildlife across those roadways. And through this process, we also wanted to engage key stakeholders and partners. So certainly Colorado Department of Transportation and Colorado Parks and Wildlife have been at the table since the beginning. Of course, the county, the city, and other stakeholders that have helped to inform this process. And as Greg mentioned, this really built upon the work of the Watershed Biodiversity Initiative and the watershed-wide study that they conducted. So not only did we bring in the data that they developed through that study on habitat quality and forage, but also, they identified as one of the big ideas and recommendations that came out of that study was to stitch it back together. How can we reduce the fragmentation impacts that have occurred in this watershed, and specifically looking at those road fragmentation impacts on habitat quality and the health of our wildlife populations in this valley. And so we're very much building on that work. And I'm not going to get into all the methods and processes that we've used here. We talked about that a little bit last time. But these are the results of the study that you're seeing here. And you can see that there's 3 areas that are in orange here. Those are what we're calling the Tier 1 areas. And what distinguishes Tier 1 from Tier 2 is simply that these are areas that we think that there's some feasibility of wildlife crossing systems and fencing in these areas. And so we want to investigate that further. So these 3 areas are on Highway 82, the airport to Woody Creek segment, also on Highway 82 around Emma, and then on Highway 133 just south of Carbondale, the Crystal River North area. And wildlife crossings and fencing, it's an important strategy. It's also an incredibly effective strategy. It's the best tool we have in our toolbox for meeting those goals of reducing collisions and improving connectivity for wildlife. They're not cheap, so we want to be super strategic about where we use those and where we implement those, but it's incredibly effective. And one of the biggest things that a Department of Transportation can do in terms of increasing safety on a roadway, but if we're increasing safety by 90 to 90+%, that's a huge impact. So we know they're very, very effective, and then we also know that we can design them effectively for these wildlife species. We can also look at how we can improve some of the existing infrastructure that's out there. And then it's also really important, we've had many conversations certainly with the county, but also with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, especially in a landscape like this that has so many pressures, so many development and other recreation pressures, that we coordinate any kind of this work and these opportunities for wildlife crossing systems with land protection efforts. And so looking at where there's existing protected lands, but also where there might be future opportunities for that. So that is what we're planning on looking at in those areas. The other priority areas that we identified, these are areas where, for various reasons, a lot because there's a lot of development already, or other reasons that we don't think wildlife crossing systems are probably the most effective strategies in those areas. What are other things that we can do? What are the other tools in our toolbox that maybe aren't quite as effective as a wildlife crossing with fencing, but can still help to reduce that wildlife vehicle conflict and help our wildlife populations? So these 3 areas are on Highway 82, the Cattle Creek North area, the Catherine area on Highway 82, and then around Snowmass Canyon. So what I want to do now is dive into kind of where we're going next. We have these study results. Where are we going to take them? So we determined that the place that it makes the most sense to focus first, simply because of certainly the magnitude of the problem, which we've identified in these areas, but also the opportunities to coordinate with various partners, would be this stretch of roadway between the Aspen Airport and Woody Creek. So just to kind of hone in a little bit on what's going on in this particular segment of roadway, we documented from the reported collision data that there's 5.2 collisions with large animals that are reported every mile every year. And again, that's just the reported collisions, so the actual number is probably about 10 or to 20 animals per mile per year. And that's a very, very high rate. And I'm sure you've seen the impacts of this as well. And then to me, this is really notable, is the number of elk collisions in this segment is so high. This is much higher than we see in a lot of other areas that I've worked, certainly in Colorado and beyond, where we have nearly 3 reported elk collisions per mile per year. And again, because of the underreporting rate for the various reasons that things don't get reported. So the actual number of collisions is, could be as high as 6 to 12 elk per mile per year, and that's very, very significant. And the cost of an elk vehicle collision, this was from a study that was conducted by the Western Transportation Institute. They calculated that that's $73,000, and that includes the direct cost of the collision, so the likelihood that most collisions end up in certainly property damage to your vehicle, but also there could be injuries to human. Occasionally there's a fatality, so the probability of those occurrences, those direct costs, but also the value of the wildlife to society. It's hard to put a number on the value of wildlife, but there's environmental economists who have done this, and so trying to bring all those costs together to understand, this has real direct impacts on our quality of life and also economically speaking as well. So, yeah, just takes one elk collision. So again, I mentioned the value of land protection and conserving habitat for wildlife. That's certainly a large concern that many folks have in this valley. So, how can we work with in areas where there are existing protected lands, but also identify and coordinate with open space, with land trusts, with other entities on, how can we strategize to bring all of these things together in terms of, if we're going to be investing in any kind of wildlife mitigation, that we're also strategically looking at land protection opportunities. Of course, that's a real challenge. There's a lot of interests and demands, but it's something that I think we're all very committed to looking at in this priority segment as we move forward.
Before you move away,
Yeah.
thank you for this. I did see this, and I just wanted to ask somebody from Pitkin County Open Space, just regarding that map. Was the map accurate right around the Brush Creek and Highway 82 intersection? And I thought the city-owned land was on the south side of Brush Creek, right there. Those meadows are city land or city-managed.
It's pretty close.
It's close, but not quite.
It's pretty close.
There's a little bit of pink over on that side.
The one
Okay.
thing that
Sorry.
you might, Zoom meetings is not responding.
Oh, no. You might have lost Zoom again. We'll keep trying to get you back. Let's keep going, though. If we can keep going legally, if it's all right, let's keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know. So can you guys? I don't know what you guys see.
So isn't
Well,
that
it got
Cozy
up.
Point and
It's
then
there.
Okay. Good.
the
Right,
Well,
Cozy Point.
yeah,
intercept
so-
lot?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Intercept
Greg,
them
there
and-
might be some, the pink up top is Town of Snowmass Village, not the city of Aspen.
Oh,
The
okay.
big pink piece
Yeah,
is the Town
to
of
the
Snowmass
left.
Village, but it's a little off there, but it's
Close enough.
It's pretty close.
It's close,
enough for now.
Thank you. Just wanted to double check because I thought that was
we'll
city
get that
property.
updated.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we can do an
Move
update.
forward,
We
that
can do
will
an
be a
overlay.
priority.
But that's a good draft. Thank you.
It is, yeah, thank you. And another thing that I wanted to point out, and that we're going to be looking at more as we move forward with this priority area, is there is existing infrastructure out there. There are, for example, there's this box culvert at milepost 36.2 that was designed for wildlife and has some functionality for wildlife, so evaluating that. There's the wildlife fencing, where there are areas where that wildlife fencing is helping us. There might be areas where wildlife fencing causes problems, where it's, especially I think, we've identified certainly the wildlife fence around the airport could in some cases be problematic, where there's fence on one side of the road and not on the other. So these are all things that we want to look at more deeply. I think it was Gary who mentioned that it's going to be a very challenging segment to look at. What are these opportunities here? Where are those challenges? And what is actually feasible here? So again, having that stakeholder engagement specifically focused on this priority area is going to be really important as we move forward here.
Could you talk about the box culvert just a little bit more? Where is milepost 36.2?
Yeah, so it's a little bit west from the airport, but somebody else might be able to help me out better with some of the local landmarks.
Kind of north, yeah. You can't, it is one of those places where as you pass the runway going down valley, it's just past that. It's just past that. You can't really see it from the road, but if you're driving down valley or on the bus going down valley, when you pass the airport, you'll see how the fencing comes to this,
Oh, yeah.
and that's the
Oh,
under.
yeah.
Yeah.
So just before Shale Bluffs,
Correct.
right at the end of the runway. And what, do we have any numbers for how many wildlife actually use that?
We actually did, we have done some cameras in there because, obviously when we were doing the next topic you're doing, we looked at this box culvert as a potential. But, there's enough wildlife that are around this area. They don't always go through it. And that's the problem is could this be made better for them and stuff like that? But we have a little bit of data because we put cameras in there to try to check it out. And as they move through with this, I'll go find all that data for them.
So
and stuff.
after they go through it, then they enter the area at the airport north of the runway?
No, it is the airport is totally fenced. So it goes to Sky Mountain Park and it goes to those pastures you see them in. When you see them above the airport, it leads to those.
But on north of the airport, that's
when
how
it
they
goes
act.
the other side, it drops into the Roaring Fork Gorge.
Right.
And that's the biggest problem is that really the most enticing thing for wildlife. We've tried to do box culverts in the past or expand them in Emma. Wildlife get a little spooked by going into dark holes. And so I'm not,
That's where the bears are waiting for them.
well, we have seen bears in those cameras, so yes.
Thank you.
And certainly we have a lot of, this is my field of expertise in terms of what different wildlife species use and will tolerate and prefer. And so, that's some of the information that we'll bring to the table in terms of making recommendations of can we build structures that are going to function for the target wildlife? Because again, we don't want to make those investments unless they work. So that's
Because
going
I
to be a
have
critical
seen
component.
when I was looking up safe passages in other places, I don't know if it's called that in other places, but I have seen so many videos of so many animals passing through those box culverts, like frogs and coyotes, and the variety was incredible.
It can be, yeah. And so it's really thinking about all of those different features, like what does a frog need versus a coyote's pretty tolerant of a lot of things. And a mule deer is too. I don't see a mule deer having a lot of issue with this box culvert. I'd call it a little undersized for a mule deer, but I could see an elk having a lot of question about this. Right. And it's also about the approaches to the culvert. Can they see through? Do they have good visibility? Do they feel secure? So all of those considerations will go into this mitigation planning process.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
I think we just need to slow people down on the highway.
Well, we can talk about that. You can, it comes up all the time, so we might as well just hit on that really quickly. Is, like conceptually, it makes a ton of sense that if people would drive more slowly, they could respond more, better and avoid wildlife in the road. And so there's two considerations I'll put there. One is that yes, you can, even if you can adequately slow people down, but you'd have to slow them down quite a bit in order to have the driver reaction time to not hit an animal. So going from 65 to 55 isn't going to be sufficient.
Well, but
You'd
the
have
speed
to.
limit's 55 and people aren't going the speed limit.
Yeah, but
Well, they're not-
we
yes.
have so many deer on Prince Creek. I rarely go home without seeing them.
Yeah.
And I'm going 35, and it's still scary as hell when you see one.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
just
it's
talking
hard
about
to
saving
stop.
a human
So,
life.
we're in the areas, the two stretches where they're going to be. You have to go like 15 or 20 when we can't do
You
that.
have to go pretty darn slow, and I think even on a stretch of roadway where it's 55 miles an hour, it's going to be very challenging and to get people. Can you get when a road is designed for people to go 55 or even faster? They're not going to drive 35, and that's going to be very, very challenging. The other thing is it still has a barrier.
I know you're not.
It still has a barrier effect for wildlife. So even the traffic volume itself is a barrier for wildlife. So in terms of that permeability for wildlife, you're not accommodating that. So that's another consideration there.
There's in the book that you gave us, there's a story about the roads are really a moving fence.
Yes.
Right? And there's a certain gap between cars that deer and elk will take a chance on, and others where they won't. In some cases, they won't even try to cross if it's continuous traffic.
Exactly.
But if it's a 6-second gap, they might take a chance and get hit. or something like that.
Yeah, so, and that's exactly right, is that it does act like a moving fence. And so this was based on research that was conducted in Wyoming, specifically with regards to mule deer, but that mule deer need at least 60-second gaps between vehicles in order to make a successful crossing. It's not to say that they won't try with
Right, they'll
shorter
try.
gaps, but then they risk getting hit. And once you have kind of what is, more of a continuous stream of traffic, they're not even going to try at all. So they might try at night when traffic is all lanes are lower, but there's a lot of times when they can't even attempt those crossings. So that's part of the challenge here.
So we just have slow deer, we need to speed them up.
So are you saying that they are sufficiently intelligent to assess danger to some degree?
To some degree, I mean, they can assess certainly a constant flow, what feels like a constant flow of traffic. So if there's a car coming every 5 or 10 seconds, it's like it's kind of that hesitation behavior. And at a certain point, you just give up. You turn around and go back the way you came. Then if there's a longer gap, say like a 30-second gap, you think it's safe, and because there hasn't been anything that's come by, and then you go, and then it's like, are you lucky? Did you have enough time to get all the way across, or did a car come and either you go back or you get hit, or all those kinds of things. So I mean, they're not doing the math, but certainly that perception is a big part of their responses to traffic.
And that's why the actual collisions, it's a bell curve. So right in the middle where there's like gaps, but not large gaps between cars, is where the highest number of hits are. And then when you have just constant traffic, like on the 101 in Los Angeles, you see it go down because they don't even try. Or
Yeah.
I-70 would be
Or,
another
yeah.
example of that, where it's just a barrier at that point.
It's an interesting question, though, Michael, because the whole deer in the headlights thing on a road as slow as Prince Creek, for instance, is real. I mean, they will just stop in the
Freeze.
road. And I guess maybe they just don't do that on fast-paced roads, but they seem, let me just say, they seem oblivious sometimes
Yeah.
of the cars. Maybe because they're so seldom, the cars, or?
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on, and some of it is we're still learning some of the behavioral responses to traffic, because traffic is a novel predator. They did not evolve
Right.
in response to traffic. And then these cars come along and, they're going really, really fast and in a straight line. And so their response to a deer's response to a predator is stop and freeze, and hopefully they won't see me, right? And so that doesn't work out well because, it is literally a deer in headlights in that situation. So different species do have different responses to traffic. Like some animal, like back to a skunk, a skunk's response to a predator is to spray them. That also does not work well with it. It doesn't make your car smell good, but it doesn't work well. And so, so all of these factors come into this situation that is, that they were not evolved to do. And then, we're all in this challenging situation that isn't great for wildlife and not great for drivers.
I wonder if we've evolved to deal with traffic.
Therein lies a different discussion.
I have a 4-year-old
You
and I
from
can
New
say
York or
no.
LA?
It's an acquired response, yeah.
Oops, I don't know what I just did there. Okay, so this is kind of where we're heading next. With this, we separated the next steps specifically for this airport to Woody Creek segment for this developing these next steps into 3 stages. So the first stage is what we're kicking off here in the next month. Stage 1, it's actually developing this mitigation strategy, and all the things that we've been discussing here is kind of what comes out through this process, bringing the local stakeholders in. What are the particular issues on the landscape? Where, what kind of challenges do we have? What do we think is actually feasible from both a land use and land ownership standpoint, as well as from an engineering standpoint, and coming up with different alternatives and recommendations and evaluating those, and ultimately preparing a very specific mitigation strategy for this particular stretch of roadway. So that's kind of where we're heading with this first stage. And then the next stage is taking that a bit further and looking at, okay, so if here's these recommendations. Let's dig into those a little bit more. We work with someone who does drone photogrammetry and creates these very high precision terrain models and allows us to make renderings like the one you see up here. And also, because it's terrain-based modeling, it's very explicit. It's not just a conceptual artist rendering of like what it might look like on the landscape, but actually, hey, this fits, and we can grade out this approach and not have to take down a whole hillside or create a big hole where animal have to go into to access a crossing structure. So all of this really feeds into future engineering design and development. And this is, what we're looking at here, examples of wildlife crossings, but there's also, we'd also be considering other types of mitigation depending on, what comes out of those recommendations. So this would be stage 2. And again, building off of those recommendations on stage 1, and then that fades into stage 2. And so you can see there's a little bit of overlap that we're proposing in the timeline here in order to have those recommendations feed right into this mitigation concept development and then so kind of the end part of stage 1 and stage 2 would be concurrent in this process. But really stage 1 is feeding directly into stage 2.
Wait, can I make a quick?
Oh yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
Kelly.
We just need to
I'm sorry.
remember through
Francie.
this section.
You know who
Kelly,
she
you
is.
can comment. Did you have a comment?
No, you're first.
Through this section, we also have public access issues to the
Yeah.
river. Because fly fishing is a big thing along that stretch of river. So we want to make sure that we take that into consideration.
Yeah.
Because we will hear from that sector of our community.
No, and thank you for bringing that up. I think that is a really important consideration that comes up in many of these projects. So knowing that up front is absolutely key because, and understanding then engaging with those stakeholders and understanding where are those key access points? Where do we need to make sure that that is provided? Because we also know that if we put up a fence in an area that's a key access point, your fence is going to get cut. And we don't want to, that doesn't work
Well,
well
it's
for
right
anyone.
where you're talking is where they park on the side of the road and
Yeah.
hike down to the river.
Okay, perfect.
But there's a big fence and we put gates
Yeah.
in those fences.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
But
we know
I just want to make sure
yeah,
that we don't.
We're definitely going to
We
work.
have to balance all of the issues,
I
not just
fully
the
agree.
wildlife.
And
So-
that is what this process is about. It is about bringing in, whether it's particular landowner concerns, whether recreation access. I mean, we've designed projects in tandem with like a recreation path and a lot of these kinds of access issues and considerations. So that's a huge part of this process. The wildlife and their needs is one piece, but a lot of it is understanding kind of the human landscape as well.
Right, and we also have some land along there that is open space, so it's restricted in what we can do on it without going to a vote to change it.
Yeah.
It's
So those
interesting,
issues
Marine
come
Corps-
up too.
Horse Council has already said something to the effect of, we don't intend to use these, it's not appropriate for us to do so.
Graham has his hand up.
Well, I was just gonna ask a quick
Sorry.
question. Can people and, I guess, horses and animals share the land bridges?
It's not advised. I mean, it has happened in some places. Generally, if we're investing in mitigation infrastructure for wildlife, it works best if we restrict it for wildlife. So, I think there's some exceptions in areas where a population is very habituated to human activity and so forth. We might, but generally, yeah, the answer is no, let's keep those uses separate. It's better for people and as well as for the wildlife.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
So-
Yeah, we do have a stage 3 that is focused on outreach and communication materials, so just wanted to mention that. That would be following stages 1 and 2. And then this slide just outlines the budget for each of these 3 individual stages. So for a total project cost of $110,000 to complete the entire project. And I did, I don't know if we want to go into it, I had a couple slides that just kind of outline some of the, how these things get funded generally. Should we hit on that? Okay, let me go hit on that. So this is sort of just an overall sort of timeline process of how these projects are undertaken. So in our case, we completed the wildlife mitigation prioritization study, so we have this very clear and transparent prioritization process that tells us where we should be working in this landscape. Then kind of these next 3 steps of developing and evaluating mitigation alternatives, engaging the stakeholders and the public, and developing that mitigation plan. That's what we're kicking off now, specifically for this airport to Woody Creek segment. And then it gets into those engineering processes, the engineering design, and then again, then you're looking for more funding and completing design and construction. And in general, what we see of how these projects get funded in terms of, working through a public-private partnership is, and this isn't always, there's no one size fits all, but a lot of times we see these initial phases that get funded mostly by these local and private funding sources that really it shows the commitment at the community level for these types of projects and helps to leverage funding because as you can imagine, finishing the design and construction is the most costly phase of that project. And so the second, which you can't see right now, but the other side of that arrow is, in funding the engineering, design, and construction. That's when having all of that, having the mitigation plan, having some of the conceptual designs, having all that funding that was provided at the local level helps us to leverage those state and federal grant funds. And so it really positions projects well to access
When
those
you
funding
talk
sources.
about local funding, you're talking about not only local government but philanthropy. How are you doing? Because I use that as a measure of public interest.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, it varies in all kinds of landscapes of how much, a local entity, in this case, Roaring Fork Safe Passages is carrying that torch, and through some of those outreach and education materials, communicate out what the vision is for this landscape, and look for other kinds of grant sources, so nonprofit grant, foundation grant sources, as well as private donations that come in to fund these types of projects. In other areas, there's different types of entities, but generally having some kind of organization that can move that process along.
Yeah, so we do have partners in private funders. We also have been, as I mentioned before, awarded local grants. And we also, in the future, will continue to try to develop relationships with entities like SkiCo. And it's common for actually ski resorts in particular to be large partners in these types of projects, but there may be other business entities that could participate in the first part of this funding, just getting us to the point of seeking state and federal funds.
Can you be any more specific about fundraising so far? Because I know you've been doing it, and
yes. So in 2022 and 2023, we raised $130,000, and then beginning this year, we have had $25,000 come in. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for that. It's good to know.
Yeah.
Is that from the city?
From various funding sources.
Did the
Philanthropy.
city contribute?
I think it's not yet, right?
The city and Parks and Open Space have both
Oh, they have. Okay.
participated. Yeah.
Great.
This year?
Part
This year for part of this 52,000 or 53?
No.
no, not yet.
No, that was last year's to get to this point.
The city is committed to 26,000.
For this year, that's what I thought.
And that's what.
Great. Okay. Thanks for that.
Considering as well.
It's-
Thank you.
So
that's-
basically, yeah, we're at a point where, the thing for the Open Space Board is, this is a budget supplemental. So it's to get this stage 1 done, and it's $26,000. And then we'd be back in September, if they get this done by September, to give an update of where they got and what they see. And then we could do another budget supplemental at that time to do the next phases. And I like to do it like this because these are supplementals. It wasn't part of a major budget process, so you didn't see everything else. And this way you get a check-in. You get a check-in at the time. It's not going to hold the project up at all. We're just going
Okay.
to move it
That's a
through.
good question. Thanks for
And yeah, it's not going to hold it up. And so far, and we also got to see in the next phase, who else can be a partner in that funding. So today for the Open Space Board, I would need a recommendation to submit the budget supplemental to the BoCC, and then usually the BoCC just gives a thumbs up or not.
I'll make
For
a
now.
recommendation that we submit that budget supplemental.
It doesn't
the
have to go through our
BoCC.
supplemental budget process.
Well, it will, but these guys need to put it in there.
Yeah, so we can't just give it a thumbs up, we
Well,
have to go through a
you're not
budget
voting
supplemental
on it, you're just, you should let us know if you don't want to do this.
process. Oh, today, you mean?
So, but
Yeah.
is it appropriate for the Open Space Board to discuss and give you direction then?
Because we've got to be.
'Cause
Well, you
we're
made a
actually at the-
motion, so
made
you
We're
a
almost,
motion that
we
we
heard, okay, I just want to make sure
forward
that's.
it
Made a
to you guys.
motion, so you can
Okay.
discuss it if there's a
Do you have a
second.
second?
If there's a second?
I second it, but I have a question. so-
All right,
You
so
go
let's
ahead and
have a
discuss, yeah.
discussion on that quick.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I was concerned about having been in the business once, the durability.
Come up to your
of-
microphone, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Having been in the business myself once, I always wonder about the durability of advocacy efforts, and I'm wondering, what is your position in this? I assume it's not local, and are either or both of you getting paid for what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm a consultant. My company is Eco Resolutions. I'm based in Golden. I work across projects across Colorado and
Got it.
other western states.
Understand.
So I've been hired by Roaring Fork Safe Passages to conduct these studies.
Got it.
So to date, I have been a volunteer for Roaring Fork Safe Passages, and moving forward, we will be putting in, and this is important for a number of reasons. One, for me to support my family here, but we will be putting a salary for an executive director, and that's essentially the only overhead we have. It'll start out modest for Pickens County this year and then move into something that is competitive. And I think that that's particularly important. We'll be comparing that to, I think the Aspen Community Foundation has like a report of various ED levels. And in the coming years, we'll try to get into something that's relatively competitive. And the reason being that I believe the success of this entity is based on my ability to replace myself. If I were hit by a bus tomorrow, this would go away, and we don't want that to be the position of the nonprofit. I think that there's various stages that and different ways that Roaring Fork Safe Passages is involved in the different areas of the valley, but I believe that it needs to maintain its advocacy and ability to hold stakeholders together for quite some time into the future. This is a long-term project. It's not a short-term project, and I need to be replaceable.
point of
So I just, if I can follow that up, I would hope that we would move quickly to compensation for the director as quickly as possible. And I would also hope that you would include in your list of donations the in-kind donations that you have presented, which
thank
is
you. Yeah.
substantial.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily comfortable with funding the ED, the executive director position.
This part of it is not. This
I
part
know,
is
but
fully
she said
for-
you'll be coming back for some small moderate amount from Pickens County.
Yeah, we don't usually.
We don't usually do that,
No,
so
we
just to
don't.
give you a heads up, we don't usually do
not
that.
usually, but we do not do that.
Yeah.
Because our funding is really meant for
Yeah,
projects.
so I just want a clarification on that. So Michael, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, so I will disagree on that, obviously.
Kelly and then
Yeah,
Graham.
no, I just was curious, do you have what is the board structure? Like who do you have a board of directors? Who's on it? Who
Yes.
is-
So we have the most recent person who joined, and I actually haven't spent a lot of time with him, but I'm excited to have him on, is Jonathan Lowski, who's a biologist, a wildlife ecologist in the valley.
Familiar. We know him well.
Okay, so you guys know him.
Use them as a consultant, so.
And then we have Will Roush, who is the executive director of Wilderness Workshop. I have Rebecca Mirsky, who's part of Mirsky Consulting, and then I also have Tom Cardamone, who is
We know who he is.
We don't
Yes,
know who
thank
this
you.
is. Yeah. Bunch of newcomers.
okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you finish?
Make-
the-
I'm sorry. I have Charles Simon, who is also a young, incredible lawyer locally as well.
Okay,
Apologies.
Great, thank you.
So let's let
I'd
them
just
finish.
let the open space board finish.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
they
you
got
guys
a
are,
motion and
unless
a
we're still having a
second.
conversation, do you want to call the question?
Yeah, let me make some comments if I could.
Okay, and Steve's going to have one too before
And
you
this
call the
might
vote.
inform you on stuff for your motion too.
Okay.
But go ahead, you go first.
I certainly support the 26,000 to keep going. I think it's a great project. I would like to emphasize that open space so far has been, a huge contributor to this, and that we did fund the biodiversity project, over $200,000. We've put in millions of dollars on both sides, excuse me, of 82 to help get these things done without purchasing land. So we're very committed to this. But I do think going forward, I'm glad you talked in the beginning about the difficulty of financing and the importance of getting a lot of different partners, because on the Open Space Board, we have to look at the segment of funds that we are going to be spending on sort of the wildlife issue. We have to balance this with, could we buy this property or get a conservation easement? So, going forth, I think the more funders you can get, really broad. And then just secondly, quickly, I think it'd be interesting to see whether you get better bang for the buck in the Tier 2 properties that are going to be a lot less expensive. And the land bridges are certainly the great thing, and maybe that's where you raise your money. But, the Tier 2 things I think could be really important. Making the approaches to these culverts, maybe just painting them a certain color or painting trees on them. I don't know. You maybe know. But, Tier 2 could be very important here as well.
And we didn't touch on this, but we will be commencing the mitigation strategies for all the other locations at the beginning of 2025. So we're not like pushing that down the road. It'll start fairly soon.
Physically commencing them?
No, commencing the mitigation strategy plan that Julia will be conducting.
Okay.
Quickly, do we want to make a recommendation, Amy? Do you want to say anything?
I would just say that I appreciate this next phase, and I definitely am supportive of this next phase of getting partner stakeholders and public engagement and really understanding kind of that there's buy-in for this, and that we want to do this, and what that next piece looks like. So
So I think we have a motion. Do we need a motion?
you have
We still have
a motion.
discussion.
Second.
Can we finish the discussion with Steve, or do you?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm sorry.
So I think it's really important to understand what the wildlife are doing, and I'm glad that Jonathan Loski's participating. Up on the highway between Pinedale, Wyoming and Jackson, Wyoming, there's a huge pronghorn overpass, and just the ideal location, I believe, and they have miles and miles and miles of wildlife fence to lead them to that crossing point, and it's a major migration route, and I think they have tens of thousands of pronghorn go over that every year over one crossing. But they planned that really well, and they figured out where they are, where they want to go, what's their routine. Same thing with the elk herd on Sky Mountain Park. The ones going in Greg's backyard over in Brush Creek Village, I presume they're crossing the Brush Creek Road someplace or other, but are they going places to get water or to get to more feed, or they're connected habitat places? And I think understanding that as part of this whole study for where would be the ideal wildlife crossings is really important. If they're just going for water, it's possible to provide water on a place where there's no water right now, probably a whole lot cheaper than building any kind of a crossing. So
yeah.
I think understanding those kind of things up front and doing the plan very strategically could save a lot of money and make the project really work well when we get down to the specific site and then design the crossing for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a crucial point, and we might have glossed over that a little bit, but that's a huge part of what drives the mitigation plan development is where are the wildlife on the landscape? Where do they need to go? What are their motivations? All of that information. So, some of that we have compiled already to some extent through the watershed-wide study that we completed in that prioritization process, but now it's really about drilling down into this specific portion of the landscape and putting it in that local context. So yeah, it's a huge part of the process.
Can I point to Patty? Or, God, why am I doing this?
I have no idea. That barbecue scrambles
The
your
barbecue
brain.
sauce.
Kelly.
Kelly.
Kelly wasn't even here today.
Maybe it's coffee I need.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm supportive. Definitely, I have some concerns about feasibility. I want to be really realistic. You know, like, is one success? Like, if we do one, is that successful? Because some of these are really high price tag things, you know. Or if we do just tier 2, like, is that success? You know, so I just want to sort of caution, you know, and sort of draw on some of the experience from open space of, like, you know, we have plans for projects that take like many years and go into decades, and, you know, before things actually like get decided on, funded, and delivered. And you know, so I very much appreciate kind of the prioritization of identifying, like, this is what we think has the biggest bang for the buck. But you know, I don't want us to get so far down the road of, okay, we've planned all of them out, and like maybe one is a success, right? So I just have some concerns about doing tons of feasibility studies when really deliverability is going to be smaller than that.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I mean, since I just drove this segment to get here, and I'm definitely aware of the challenges, and I don't, you know, I'm not coming into this with any preconceived notions of like how many crossing structures are there going to be. That's the process, you know, of putting all these pieces of the puzzle together to be like, is this feasible? Can we actually do this here? And where can we and where can't we? And it could be a combination of things, you know, maybe we can make some improvements at that existing box culvert. You know, maybe we need to look at upsizing that, you know, maybe there's another opportunity for a crossing structure. Maybe there's some portions of this 5-mile segment where crossing structures aren't the answer, and we have to look at like some other measures of reducing that conflict and trying to provide some level of connectivity. Maybe we find some areas where we're like, you know, maybe it's okay if we could provide these resources on one side of the road and not the other. I mean, I think all of that is a part of kind of evaluating these different scenarios and alternatives, and what do the wildlife need now, but also in the future, and considering those future conditions, both from a development, but also, you know, climate impacts. That's going to get more and more challenging for wildlife to navigate these landscapes in the future with all of these pressures, and just, you know, trying to determine what the best strategies are. And certainly, you know, wildlife crossings are an amazing tool where they work and where we can build and design effective structures, and with that fencing, because the fencing is part of that system, and we know we need the fencing too. And so all of this has to work together. And where we have to say, you know what, that is not the right strategy for here.
I guess I would just say, you know, these are very reasonable study costs, but you know, studying the whole universe of what could happen can be that maybe that money should just go to like getting something done.
Yeah.
And I can,
Getting away,
you
know.
I love hearing that. Just really quickly that that's part of why we ended up with this staged approach, is so that we can learn collectively what are the mitigation strategies where, and are there things, near-term actions that we can take, maybe holes in fences, maybe improving sightlines, things that we can take before we get to 5 years down the road where we're implementing potentially a bigger crossing structure or not. But, you know, I think that's part of why it's phased and why we have staff participating like in the work plan in this, so that if something comes up, we have, you know, county lands, city lands, protected lands where we can act faster if and when appropriate, depending on stage 1 results. So.
Francie, sorry, Graham, we're going to go around a little bit more before you get back to your question.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Francie.
You may have covered this earlier when I was distracted. I apologize if you did. But what is the role of CDOT in this? And are they going to be an impediment, or are they going to help us? And do they have funding? And, I mean, we're clearly going to be on their territory. So I'm wondering, where are they in this?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. I mean, CDOT has been a part of this process to date, so they're very much engaged and aware of what's going on, both at the regional scale, so the Regional Environmental Office, as well as just kind of the region in general, but also through the Colorado Wildlife and Transportation Alliance, which involves both CDOT and CPW lead that, but it's many, many other partners that are involved in that too, thinking about, when we get beyond this valley and think about on a statewide scale, how do we prioritize where we're working and, what our priorities are as a state. And so obviously we can't do everything everywhere. And that speaks again to having kind of the local commitment and local support for these kinds of projects, because that really galvanizes the state agencies to participate in these processes. And knowing that there's a commitment on the ground locally helps them to engage. And I'm sure you've seen that with other types of projects as well. So, I think both in terms of, it is their infrastructure, they're responsible for it, so they need to be a very direct part of the process. I wouldn't say that that CDOT is necessarily, especially if it's a standalone mitigation project, not integrated with other kinds of roadway improvements or that kind of thing. CDOT's not going to write a check for design and construction, but there are other state funding sources through some of the state safety grants that that they can help us to apply for. There's also through things like the Senate Bill 151, which created a fund, and hopefully that'll become a permanent fund over time for Wildlife Crossings Project in Colorado. And all of that also helps us to apply for these federal grant opportunities. So that is the
go down
roadmap.
this long road of studies and stakeholder engagement, and then CDOT says, no, we're not doing that in the Roaring Fork Valley.
I think by engaging, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball by any means, but by engaging the agency both at the regional level and more broadly, these processes are happening. These are, the recommendations that are coming locally. This is the plan. That is what really supports them to be engaged then in these projects. And we've done this in other areas as well. Highway 9 in Grand County is an excellent example on that project between Green Mountain Reservoir and Kremling. That was initiated locally by a local conservation ranch, but with support from the community and the community and the towns and the counties also contributed funding for that. And that enabled CDOT to take a project that was just kind of sitting there for over a decade and move that forward and then become successful in applying for grant funds.
And so they were positively involved with the one between Bayfield and Pagosa?
Yes, they were very much involved. The one that was just constructed, the overpass, that was in partnership with the Southern Ute Tribe, and they were working very much in tandem on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Kinsley had another comment. I have one too, just to warn you.
CDOT has a record of on its own doing some of these things, not so much overpasses, but underpasses. There's 3 or 4 box culverts in Snowmass Canyon, and in one of them in particular I found really instructive. You got to kind of scramble to get to it, but there's a huge funnel built on the east side of Williams Hill that's both earth structures and fences and interesting gates that feed down to a box culvert.
Mm-hmm. And one of the objectives of taking a look at the whole valley and coming up with our priority list is that when there are projects, and some of these are going to be very long term, but when CDOT comes to the valley and they go, okay, we have a safety concern here, or we're going to have to do X, Y, or Z to our roadways, then we have this plan ready and we can be like, okay, that's great. We know that this area is going to need improvement, and they'll be able to incorporate that into the plan. So I think that you're right, that not all of these are going to get done, and some of them will be, we should consider a win to be something quite small in the short term, but in the long term, us having this kind of ready to go will be a tool for CDOT as they do improvements to the roads in the valley.
And it's cheaper that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to add before you call your question that my feeling about this is, one, it's essential. I'd like to see wildlife trails and wildlife crossings, as I consider them, to be part and parcel of what open space does, and you have dedicated funds that are split between property acquisition and trails creation and management. And I think for me it would be an easy add to consider putting funds from our open space program into these, because wildlife trails turn out to be as important as human trails, and maybe more so if we're trying to protect habitat. And so I would encourage you to consider it that way. And I also want to make sure that it seems as if like 26,000 is not a big ask. I think the ask was bigger and it got pared down. I understand how you're phrasing it, and it seems like that's working. But I also see that we've got some huge asks from open space for other projects, and I wonder if they're treated the same way. And I just want to make sure we're looking at these objectively the same way, because honestly, I think there are times when wildlife crossings might be more important than the big projects that open space is considering, as well. And I don't want to take any of them out of consideration, but I want to weigh them appropriately. Thanks for that. I'll shut up now and let you call the question.
Speaking of human crossings,
I'm going to let him call the question, if that's okay.
no, I'm saying, I know you're chairing the meeting, but we now have like 15 minutes for a huge topic before us.
Thank you.
What's the vote on the open space board in support of this 26,000? All in favor?
Aye.
We all unanimously
Great.
recommend approval.
We don't vote
of
on
the
this. We
26.
don't vote.
Oh, you said aye.
She
I
said
thought
Say
you
aye.
said
Yeah, no, of course, it's my
Patty
mouth.
probably said aye. It's okay.
No, I appreciate them doing that and bringing it back to the board in the appropriate manner.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna have to move on, and I appreciate
Can I
the
really
time you
quickly just acknowledge, I don't know that I properly have in this meeting, that I just want to say thank you to the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space for matching that 26. And I know it was in your memo, but I just want to thank them.
Great, thank you. And thanks for coming. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the books, by the way.
Yeah.
We'll have open space board books.
Yeah, I didn't get a book.
You do have a book.
You do have a
Right
book. You
here.
just have to come in and pick it up. Okay, Cecily, Julia, we've got to move on, and if you want to stick around for Brush Creek Park and Ride trails, you could do that. But I think there'll be other people getting on deck, so. I'm going to hand it back to Gary.
Okay.
And we'll probably go a little bit over. I apologize into the break, but that's just too bad.
Well, we have a
Thanks for the
5-minute break.
consideration there.
Okay.
Don't
You
worry,
can
we
all
have
get up
nothing
and
else
take
to
a
do.
break if you need to, right?
All right. All right. This is not letting me in. There we go.
Are we
Why
back
is
on Zoom? Yeah.
Why can't I get
Oh, thank you
to
for trying.
that to share it?
Okay.
There we go. Perfect.
Because Francie,
Oh, Andrew's on.
Francie,
Andrew's there.
the APSA
Great.
meeting starts at 4, correct?
It does. We're going to be out of here before then, no question.
We have huge issues on the rest of the agenda.
Good presentation. Very interesting.
Okay, does anybody else need to come and sit down? Are we good? Kathleen's here. All right.
Don't want to take away from getting one of those treats.
Start without doing
Yeah, if anybody needs to get up and use the
I can walk
bathroom,
you
get a
down.
drink, get a treat, go ahead. We're going to keep moving here. Thank
Probably
you.
gonna have to work right through our break, I'm thinking.
Probably.
You're ready? I'm ready.
I'm ready. Go for it.
Okay.
We don't get a break.
Switching to the Aspen Airport Business Center to Brush Creek Trail Project. So today, kind of the goals for today and why we're here is to give the BoCC a review of the community engagement and analysis findings. And because the Open Space and Trails Board from both the city and county had a joint meeting in November, and they met and we gave them the full rundown of the whole plan, and they both voted unanimously to move this forward. And at the budget, I told you guys that we were including $250,000 in the budget. The city's including $250,000 in their budget for next year, but I would be back before I spent a cent of that to give you an update and see where you're at. So today's really to see if you guys, kind of give me the direction to move forward with that funding and where we go from there. But it's also a chance for the Open Space and Trails Board to give you their comments and why they voted in favor of moving this forward. And so for the next part is, I know you guys are all familiar with this. We've been talking about this for the last 3 years. And back in 2022, when we went to the EOTC meeting, both the EOTC at the time, which all you guys are members, basically said, okay, we're okay with the feasibility, but what does the public think? So do a public engagement process and then come back to us with what that public engagement process was about. And so the overview of the project is trying to connect the Brush Creek Intercept lot with the Aspen Airport Business Center via trail, and to determine, we did the feasibility study. I'm not going to go through all that. You guys have heard that ad nauseum. And so that is, and through the feasibility study, we came up with this kind of twin bridges alignment. And it was the most economical and most feasible to do. And so we took that to the public. And so what I'm going to do is, I'll let Kathleen introduce herself, but Kathleen has worked with us with the public engagement piece of this, and she was really kind of the spearhead of getting the public engaged so we can get to this point. And also, I didn't introduce Matt Kuhn, but Matt Kuhn is the City Parks and Open Space Trails Director, and he, I think you all know him, but the city has been an incredible partner with us through this entire process. So they are basically, so far, have been a 50-50 partner on this. So with that, Kathleen.
Welcome, Kathleen. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Kathleen Vonatovich. I work with Open Space and Trails for many years and really enjoyed working on this project with them. I want to say that it was a robust community engagement process, but a large portion of this project was also a deep analysis. So the data analysis and the community engagement really were hand in hand. Every time we got new data, we looked at that and included it in our public engagement. So it was great to work on a project that wasn't just community engagement, but took that information and looked at the data and tried to analyze it and develop our cost-benefit analysis as well. So going deeper on those public perceptions. So one of the big takeaways is that the two new bridges kind of represent community connections. And that might be sort of a simple statement, but with all of our dialogue and talking to people, more and more we recognized that this trail serves many purposes for connecting to mobility, connecting communities together, connecting one another, recreationally connecting to the area, connecting to mobility options, and our greater community connectedness, which was fun to see as an outcome. Every user has a different use of this trail. We also looked at who would be the potential users of this trail. Through the public outreach, people we talked to, and specifically the project interest group, the AABC bridge location really needs to be closer to the AABC. What we heard from people who live in the AABC and the surrounding neighborhoods, where we have could you take a look at where that's located? Right now it's 0.9 from the Aspen Airport Business Center would be the trail connection, would be the bridge connection for the Aspen Airport Bridge. And they wanted to know if we could look at feasibility of connecting that a little closer to the Aspen Airport Business Center and the growing community that we're going to see there. There was also talk on, Nordic use, multi-use, a winter trail, thinking about this as a year-round possibility, use of this connection year-round, specifically for Nordic, less for commuting.
So I can take this part. So this is, we've been working on this project for a really long time, and we've been including it into the county-wide surveys that the county overall sends out. And we've been asking this question in 3 different surveys, and what we found was that overall it's very important to somewhat important for a majority of the county, and this includes people down in Redstone, this includes people in Basalt, and up in Aspen. It does, because it's a statistically valid survey that the county does. So we've been doing it, so it has shown support. And why did we put this in the survey is because in 2012, we did a gap analysis of our system. And, because we look at our system as a spoke. It's like the spokes and the wheels and the hubs and where do you go? And when you look at the whole system overall, what is missing and what were the gaps? And when we did the community, kind of engagement back in 2011, 2012, that was one of the gaps that came out. We've filled a ton with working with the city. We have done a ton. We've been able to get the Brush Creek Trail done, and we've been able to improve the Owl Creek Trail, and we've been able to connect Cemetery Lane to the Aspen Trails up above, and we've been improving the Rio Grande Trail all over these years. So we've been able to do a lot, but this gap still remains. And so that's from the survey. So then here was the focused engagement piece.
I'm sorry, could you go back to that? Just to drill down. I'm looking at the percentages, and it looks like maybe it's within a margin of error, but it looks like the responses are moving in a certain direction in between 2016 and 2018, and it's not the direction I anticipated you wanting it to go. And so I just want to understand this.
Well, 2016 was 42%, very important. 39%, somewhat important. 2018 was 35%, 39%, and then 2021 was almost 36% and 40%. So, it's still within the margins of error of how close it is. I mean, it's been pretty consistent overall. If you're talking about a few percentage points either way. So it's talking to the people actually.
It hasn't become more important.
No, it hasn't been, but it's been pretty important since back in 2016.
Did we not do it on this last survey?
We didn't do it on the last survey. We didn't. There was a problem with that. So.
Okay.
So we don't know where the people stand today.
Well, the thing is also we were doing this public process at the same time. So
I remember that conversation.
It's kind of a weird deal to do the statistically wide survey and then also do another survey and public engagement all at once. It's, you start to overload, and so that in the way it was, we ended up doing this, and so that's, this was a lot more detailed.
Great. Thanks for that aside.
So we really tried to utilize every tool available in public engagement in Pickens County to identify what that public perception is, and participate in comments and have that open dialogue. We did this over the summer where we were thinking about starting it in early spring of last year, and then we sort of said, let's launch it in summer when people are really paying attention, are out using the trails, and we'll have better participation level. We formed a project interest group made up of about 10 to 15 people of Pickens County who are representative of diverse group. This project interest group was not a group that was a cheerleading group for the project. They were really formed to help debate all issues and concerns of the project, and we would bring back information to the project interest group as we received it. And it was a good place to have a dialogue around what we were hearing, concerns, and also support in what we were hearing around that. So we had a series of small group meetings, neighborhood meetings. We met with people, and I say neighborhoods. The neighborhoods is an important part of this project. If you go back and look at where the project's located and you zoom out, there are lots of different small communities and neighborhoods in and around the project area. And they all have specific needs and are thinking about mobility, transportation, and recreation through a different lens. Along with this, we developed a publicity campaign which drove people to participate on the survey, provide comment. So both the outreach and the publicity I would say we really reached people, upwards of thousands of people, with including this information in various newsletters, having focus groups, having community meetings, and also events in 5 different pop-ups throughout the area. You asked us to go down Valley as well and see what people would think down Valley if they would use this as a connection, and we tried to do that as well. We worked with RAFTA and tapping into their stakeholders to try to get as much support as we can in terms of participation. So we had 500 survey participants. The survey was open for 2 months. And this is a large-scale project. And what we heard from people is that it's bold, it's visionary, and it's forward-thinking. And I use the word bold because we know this is going to be a very expensive project and a very big investment. Visionary and forward-thinking. What is mobility and transportation going to look like 10, 20, 30 years from now in Aspen and in Pitkin County? And how might this project play a role in that? We will jump to some of the themes here in a little bit, but one of the other themes was proactive leadership, really looking at this role as an investment in transportation, recreation, and connection and access to our trails. Greater than 70% of the survey participants supported the Twin Bridges alignment as a preferred option. Throughout this public process, we asked people which option would they like. No option, no trail connection, the Aspen Airport Bridge connection, the Twin, or just the Brush Creek or the Twin Bridges. And the first choice is really the Twin Bridges alignment, which would be both of the connections, with the caveat of taking a look at where the Aspen Airport Business Bridge could be located differently.
So we didn't ask for the option if you just wanted a bridge at the AABC?
Yeah, we did.
We did.
Okay. I didn't hear that in there. I heard
It was
one at
no
the
option, one bridge, the other bridge, or both.
Okay,
bridges.
I didn't hear that. ABC. Thank you.
So before I get into themes, I will say that the project, from my lens and from the comments I reviewed, and if you read all of the public comments that are in the packet, is overwhelmingly support for the project. But there were several people who were not supportive of the project, and mainly their concerns were around cost and environment and use. Would people utilize it? How would they use it? Would it be effective for decreasing trips? As well as the cost, how this is a really big investment for the county, and that was a concern, as well as the environment, ensuring that the Royal Gorge is protected in this project. So in every public engagement project, we try to group themes and kind of come to discovery of themes, what's common throughout when we've talked to people. Number one, absolutely, is safety. And when we first started this project, when we were in early team meetings, safety was not really on our radar. I don't know why it wasn't, but it wasn't one of our project goals. Very quickly, it became one of the main comments we heard was safe. The connection now is not safe on Highway 82 for cyclists, and certainly not even really usable for, we don't want people using that as a pedestrian walking on Highway 82 to get to the to get into the Aspen Airport Business Center. Community connection, I talked about that briefly, but also interconnectivity with each other, connecting the various communities, the various neighborhoods together, the missing connection. How might this trail connect our communities with mobility, recreation, and even just community interconnectedness? That was a big theme. Improved community options, 414 survey participants out of 500, so this is a pretty big selection, said that access to multimodal transit was somewhat or very important to them. We asked several value-based questions in the survey, and multimodal came up quite frequently. I will say with the multimodal, that same conversation is, with a caveat of really looking at WeCycle's plans into the future. What's their infrastructure? How might WeCycle help, with their stations at Brush Creek Park and Ride? How might WeCycle and these 2 trail connections really enhance options for mobility in this area? this theme around improved community options was also combined with forward thinking and proactive leadership on this project. In fact, some people thought that they had already agreed, we already looked at this project and we were already doing it. And, some people were like, I feel like I'm having a little bit of deja vu, Kathleen. Have you talked to us about this before? Environment. I think environment is a large-scale community value in all of our communities, but how might we think about this project in terms of greenhouse gas emissions with vehicle reductions, but also environment on where the bridges are located? Is it sensitive to our environment? How might we have, practices as we build these two projects to secure and make sure that we have good environmental practices going forward? Proactive leadership, I'll mention that, but that's pretty self-explanatory of just, what are we not thinking about? What does the future look like in this area? And, in terms of planning and taking action on something that would benefit us in the long run. This one's pretty simple, recreational opportunities. Definitely these connections provide the missing link to our greater trail system, connecting communities through recreation. If you think of our entire stakeholder lens, we spoke to people at the farmers market who live here year round or part-time rather, and who live year round, who are runners and cyclists, and this is a missing connection in their recreational use. For those that were not so in favor of the project, one of the things we heard is that the trails are busy enough already, and by making more, we're just, getting more people out there using the trail.
Can I ask a question at this point?
Please.
Would that be okay, Kathleen?
Sure.
So when you say for recreational uses, it's an important connectivity, but you already can go to Aspen and on trails and ABC, and there's trails all over the place to take bikes recreationally. I mean, I'm not arguing with the commuter thing right now, but to say that this is an important nexus for recreation, I don't see that.
Well, and what we heard is the existing trails are not providing that connectivity for them. What we heard from people from the ABC was pretty specific, is what you have today is great, it's fun, but it's not accessible for my family. It's not accessible for my kids. It's not accessible because they are, I just put this slide up, I jumped a little bit, but there's significant grade differences. There's significant surface differences. And so, yes, there are trails, but they are not the trails that are accessible for all. And, to be, if we want to look at ADA, none of them meet ADA, not even close. And they're not direct connections. And people in the ABC, I don't know if you've ever been back there, but if you have to drop significantly to get down to the trail that'll get you to the old Stein Bridge, that then you have to climb back to the Rio. So they weren't saying that there weren't connections. They were saying the connections that are there are not working for them.
Why can't you ride from the ABC right into Aspen on the trails that exist?
You can go that direction.
I mean, why can't you do that?
You can,
Why
but
would
for
you go down to the
recreational,
Stein Bridge?
Why would you go down Valley, you mean?
No, why would you go down to the Stein Bridge if you want to go to Aspen from the ABC?
If
Well-
you want to connect to the Rio Grande Trail,
To go down
you need to
Valley.
go down a steep grade
Right.
that is.
But you could ride to Aspen and then get on the trail, and if you're just for recreation, I mean, there are connections.
there are connections. They're just not.
They're just
they're
not
not
easy
direct.
connections.
They're not easy, and they are definitely not accessible by all. And
Recreation's
so,
supposed to be easy.
right. So it's just one of those things where, this is what we heard from the public. This is
Yeah,
what we
okay.
heard
Right.
from
I'm
the
just
public. Yeah.
challenging that one tiny little thing.
No,
Well,
it's
we've also just approved the bridge down by Aspen Village
Right.
that does that exact same connection. That there is an existing connection, but it's not as safe and it's not as accessible to a majority of people, and we're trying to get people between the two.
No. The connection from Aspen Village to the Rio Grande puts you on the road. There's no shoulder, there's no easement on the road. So you're literally riding the road.
Right.
When you come
So
up
there's not like
from-
there's already a trail there
River
that you
Road.
can ride your bike on. There is nothing there.
Right.
I've been working on that for 20 years. So.
Right, but it's similar.
It's a little,
where when
it's
we-
a little different than.
when we did the public,
And it
you know,
depends.
feedback.
Well, it depends
they-
on how you talk about it too, though. If you're talking about taking the road connection between the ABC to the intercept lot, there's a road connection there.
I'm not
that is
talking about
also-
putting people on Highway 82, and there's not a lot of people that walk that, except for that one lady
There's
who
one
walks
more.
it all the time. And there's not a lot of people that ride bikes on it.
Greg
You don't
does.
see them all the time that ride bikes, except Greg. But we
But we have
don't
a
count him.
different opinion from his other
If I
family
can,
member.
Francie, can I just tag on to Francie's thing?
Yeah, and then we got to get back to Gary and keep it moving.
Well, no, we have a conversation going here. So, multimodal transportation issues. We cannot use open space and trails dollars for that, can we?
For
Yes,
what,
we
Patty?
can.
We can use it for
You
commuter,
Use it for,
multimodal connections?
yes.
And let me offer a different way to
You know
think
why?
about that.
Because
Because
it's-
for some people, commuting is their only time to recreate.
Right.
We heard that too, Kelly. That was
Right.
that was a comment.
We heard that
No,
from the
I'm
ABC.
that's not saying that. I'm just saying I didn't know we could use open space and trails money for
Right.
commuters.
We've established
and
we
get-
can.
Yeah,
Okay, let's keep
that's,
going.
I have
You
to get
can
more
use it
information on
because
that.
it is a trail. It is a trail for bicycles.
But
It's
you
a trail
keep
for-
pointing out multimodal transportation issues. I think we need to be careful in using that language because it sounds like we're using open space and trails money for transportation-related purposes, which
yeah,
I
no,
don't
no,
think
no,
we
no.
can do.
When we say multimodal, it's walking, hiking, biking. People have said they want to do others.
I wrote it
for
down. It says multimodal transportation, and we have to be careful with that because we can't use open space and trails money for transportation.
Multimodal use.
But it's also, to clarify that, we can use it for the bike and it's
Thanks, Wayne.
for the bike and hiking pieces of multimodal. We
Just
can
wanna-
use it for all of that, and that's what this is really for.
And
This
e-biking
is
is
not-
part of this now.
Yeah.
We
So,
don't need to open ourselves up for any other legal issues about how the
So-
use of open space. and
okay.
trails.
They're all fleeing. What's happening here?
Well, we said 1:30, and so,
And they're all leaving.
you know,
Got it.
well, the biggest piece is it's not for the open space board. They've already made your recommendation. It's really to you guys. But some of the open space board might want to weigh in on this to you guys.
These guys aren't leaving.
So-
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right. So, just getting back to this quickly, we look at travel sheds, and travel sheds, I'll do it really quick, is just how many people and how many trails are within 1 mile, how many are within 2 miles, and how many within 5 miles. And you start to see that, you know, a 1 mile walk shed is, you know, something that you can walk to within a mile. And you know, there's in this area between the paved and unpaved trails, there's this many trails that connect to this, and there's about 1,800 people that live in it. 2 miles, bike shed, which is an easy 2 mile bike from areas, you start to get more trails and more people. And then obviously 5 mile bike sheds. And what we're seeing is the 5 mile bike shed with the e-bike is becoming kind of like what the 2 mile bike shed was in the past. People, 5 miles is on an e-bike is not a big deal. And within this 5 mile bike shed of these potential connections, you know, you start to get, you know, there's a significant amount of people and there's, you know, significant amount of trails that this would connect to. So I just went through this. I showed you how the, you know, the existing trails and why the different connections and what we heard from people. And then, you know, you start to look at the cost analysis. I wanted to put this up here because one thing we've always known is that, you know, costs always increase. I wish I could say something differently, but they always increase. And so, and infrastructure is expensive. There's huge infrastructure projects that are expensive. But if you do them, you know, sooner than later, you save some money on inflation. But the reality, too, is when you look at what our recent open space projects, service area cost, you know, because I just talked about the service area walk sheds, Lazy Glen, the bridge we created was for Lazy Glen. There's nobody else really going to use it except for Lazy Glen and some anglers, fishermen will use it, and they do. We got fishermen access spots, but you're not really going to connect into their neighborhood. And so we kind of kept it as a 1 mile area. And you can see the different cost estimates, I mean, what the cost was to do these projects. And kind of you divide it by the residents in that service area, And you start to see, like, if you start to look at this investment over time, you're starting to, they're similar. It's not perfect by any means, but it's similar. And go into next steps. You know, the Open Space Board's voted to recommend to you guys to move this forward. And so the further study would be to actually do, you know, proceed with the engineering design and consider a 10 or 12 foot width for the Brush Creek Bridge connection. Because in the public process and looking at the feasibility and everything else, this is the most feasible, the most environmentally, you know, conscious area to do this. That you have, this picture kind of shows you, it's a pretty industrial area to begin with. You have the solar array, you got the big power lines that come across, you got the Brush Creek Park and Ride, you have the airport going over that, and Highway 82 right there. And there's a lot of impact, especially on the park and ride side. But on the other side is the sanitation land, which we are working with the sanitation department on to get access to. But there are power lines right there too. So it's a pretty impacted area to put a bridge. And we're putting it up way up high. And the way we are building this bridge and the way we're proposing it is to keep the design and the actual abutments up high. So they're way up high. They're not going down into the riparian area at all. And we've already done in the feasibility, we've looked at the environmental analysis. And yes, during construction, the area where you do the specific abutments will be impacted, but the way we can do those is not impact anything from the river. Everything will be from the upper side. And so then the next thing would be to evaluate if alternative locations exist. We've kind of looked at this, and it's tough in this area, but there might be something we can do with the existing trails. Maybe figure out a way to bridge lower. You know, there's the sanitation plant road. That little heart-shaped pond is the sanitation plant's pond.
I didn't realize it was heart-shaped.
You didn't realize it either until I saw the
So
picture.
sweet.
I was like,
From this
it's a
angle.
heart. I don't know if you want to jump in it, but it's showing love. But so there might be an area in there we can figure out a way to potentially put something in there, or you know, kind of do something with the existing trails. Because here's one of them that comes down all the way to the sanitation plant. You know, is there a way to? We've looked at trying to improve this area. It's really difficult, but I think taking a deeper dive into it, because this is the public process. We heard strongly from the ABC and Amy, who lives in the North 40.
Look at a different
Yeah,
location.
so it made sense. I totally, because the other bridge is up here. So
Down.
it's 9.9 miles away from that. So
What's the difference in span?
it's actually less. The span here,
Lower Valley's less or upper?
yeah, it's lower because you would have to
it's
land it
wider upper.
lower.
Right.
So you'd have to land it like over here on the sand plant road or somewhere else.
Still have a grade.
You will, but it also then goes, do you pave the Rio Grande Trail in that area? It's the
Another
only
big
unpaved area, and Raft has been asking us forever, and there was a 50-50 split, but I think if we're going to do a bridge in here, we'd need to look at it, but then it potentially impacts Nordic.
And is that the 7.5 million just for that section or over the entire pavement? Pave the entire thing?
And
It
then,
would pave, the 7.5 million is updating the cost of what it would take to pave the entire section.
Got it.
how
And
many more
because,
people can the Woody Creek Tavern absorb riding their bikes down there?
well, we're not necessarily, well,
Yeah.
it gets into a future proofing of all of this stuff. Because, you know, the reality of paving this section, do you pave the whole thing? What does that do to winter use? What does that do to speeds of bikes and everything else compared to that? Or do you just pave to a bridge? And there's pros and cons that we don't need to debate right now of that. But, you know, it gives you that feel of, and then we can get a public perception of it. We can ask the public, you know, if we're going to move this bridge, do you want to see it paved? You don't have to pave it. It could say the same. It doesn't have to be paved. And so we do a great job maintaining those crusher fines, and there's plenty of places where there's crusher fine trails. I can take a road bike. People road bike it all the time. We have not seen a decrease in use in this area due to it being unpaved. So it's not a necessary thing, but we want to look at it and potentially the impacts to winter use. So now we're at the point where, I just wanted to, in the thing is I'd love at least the members that Open Space Board are still here, just to give you feedback because they went through this whole thing, they listened, and they made a recommendation. So it'd be great if they could just chime in with any of their comments, and then you guys give me direction or not.
Okay.
Comments from your board?
Sure. I was, as Gary mentioned, I was involved in the process. I live at the ABC. This is definitely something that's, kind of in some ways near and dear to my heart. I've lived there for over 10 years and in the Valley for almost 30. So it's just a piece that I've experienced for a long time. Like when I first moved here, I tried to ride my bike to Basalt. I lived in Basalt. I got caught at the ABC several times because I did not know how to get down Valley in any other fashion, and just couldn't put it all together. Living at the ABC, I see people doing that all the time. They're like, how do I get, past this point safely, without going on the highway? I'd say through this whole process, what's been interesting to me is truly like the connectivity, not just for my neighborhood. Sure, yeah, I think I know I would use it, but how many other people, I want to say, kind of came out of the woodwork and said, oh yeah, I live in Snowmass Village. I would love to have that kind of connection. Sure, there's other options for them, but that this would be just a safer and better way for them, and some down valley connections for people that, to me, I hadn't thought of, like that this would be a salient connection for them. So to me, it was interesting to see how many other community folks up and down the kind of the corridor really said that this would be something that they would utilize and be interested in. Another piece that I'd say perhaps challenged me at the beginning was I thought, you have to have the straight shot. That's the easiest thing. Let's put this trail right next to the highway and make it direct, and that's the only way to go. And through the process, it came out that really isn't, fiscally responsible, among other things. That's probably the biggest piece. But that these two bridges really do provide that connectivity in a better and cheaper fashion. Like you have a better experience on a trail by doing these two bridges, and it's more fiscally responsible to do two bridges than this one kind of long behemoth hung off the side of the highway and that type of thing. So that was just a few of the pieces that surprised me, and I want to say even bolstered up the whole connectivity more to me than just me living out there and wanting to be able to connect the dots, and also listening to my community saying that connecting those dots was really important. And one other piece that I thought was just really good and interesting is like how things evolved as we went through the process. Like people said, gosh, I don't want to go down valley to cross and then go up valley. How can we change that? How can we do this better? And we're looking at other options, and other options did come up, that hadn't been explored before. So that's why I think kind of going to this next level is important. And I would say that we've recommended it as a board, and the city is also on board with the same, kind of dollars and partnership, that I would hope that would show you that there are a lot of people that are very interested in moving this forward and keeping the momentum going for pursuing this and really making it real and feasible.
Great, thank you.
Great. Grant?
I'd look on this
Great.
as not a linkage trail really, but an extension of an all-valley trail. We now have the Rio Grande Trail that goes from Glenwood to Aspen, and it's an amazing amenity. But there's one real problem with it, and that is when you get above Woody Creek, you miss all the population nodes in the upper valley. And there is a connection, the Aspen Mass Trail, that goes from near Woody Creek to Snowmass, but it's steep, it's windy, it's obscure, it shares a vehicle bridge. It's just not a viable connection. So in terms of linking Aspen to Glenwood and thinking of that as a whole concept, what is the Rio Grande Trail missing? It's missing that connection to Brush Creek Intercept and Snowmass. It's also missing the North 40. It's missing CMC, the AABC, the airport, the lumberyard project, if that gets built, Burlingame, Buttermilk, Owl Creek Trail, Sky Mountain Park, Truscott Housing, Golf Course, the new Maroon Creek Trail that I believe will be built this summer, all the school campuses, Castle Creek, hospital campus, and then it doesn't even arrive in the center of Aspen. So simply put, the Rio Grande Trail as an all-valley trail is on the wrong side of the river. And all these population nodes can be connected to down valley if we just build this one missing link. And so that's the importance of it to me. And yeah, the e-bikes, all of this stuff is changing, and I think this would become the most used trail in Picken County by quite a bit. And then, you know, obviously cost is a major issue. You know, it's almost as much as one of the nicer houses on Red Mountain. But Pitkin County and Pitkin County Open Space and Trails just completed an amazing project with bigger numbers than this, Snowmass Falls. And our staff did an amazing job of bringing together different funders and making it work. And so this program has the capability to put together very creative funding on these big projects. So I think it would be a major oversight to not move ahead with this. Also, I just talked to Wayne. He said that he's very much in favor of moving on with this. And also Howie sent me an email last night. I won't read it, but he says, I very much support the already discussed blah, blah, blah.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Graham.
Unlike the rest of the board, I was dubious about this project, and it was a very close call for me to vote in favor of it, particularly and especially because it's not a viable commuter link in the wintertime. It doesn't work at all, and it won't work at all. That said, I was persuaded by the survey results and the enthusiasm of the city open space board. They were really gung-ho on this thing. So I voted yes. Very close call.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, back to us. That's what's next. Steve?
So I have lots to unload here. I voted no against this in 2012, whatever year that was, the High Bridge we called it, which would be the one from the Brush Creek Park and Ride across to the Rio Grande. I still really am not in favor of that at all, for the same reasons that I was 12 years ago. There is, if you're looking for recreational trails, there is a trail, there's an old county road that goes through where Jaffe Park is. The concrete abutments of the bridge are still there on the Roaring Fork. The bridge was probably 30 feet long, crossing the Roaring Fork in a really narrow place, and the road goes right up by Sardi's house up by the airport. I still think that that would be a viable recreational trail. Maybe it would be just a mountain bike trail, but it would get people from Jaffe Park side across a very short bridge just a few feet above the river, really, up to the level of the ABC. Then you could do the connection from the ABC down to there. That would be a nice recreational trail that maybe wouldn't be so good for commuters, but it sounds like, I mean, one of the asks from the people is recreational accessibility. That would be a very nice trail. Looking at the two bridges that you're proposing over the Roaring Fork, the one that makes more sense to me would be the one by the ABC to just get over to the Rio Grande. It would be the same situation as Lazy Glen. They're kind of an island where it's hard to get anywhere safely from that island unless you're in a car or on a raft bus. So putting a bridge across to the Rio Grande from there connects that island to the Rio Grande Trail really, really easily. And that, I mean, if we were going to build a bridge, I would build that one maybe and then assess the other one sometime in the future. In terms of getting commuters to Aspen, I still would favor getting a bus with doors that open like a subway, like a tramway bus that people could wheel their bicycles on at the Brush Creek Park and Ride. They could walk on with their skis there really easily. People could wheel their luggage on there. They could get off at the airport, wheel their luggage off. They could wheel their bicycles off. It would be very easy and accessible way to get people from Brush Creek Park and Ride in the direction of Aspen for not only bicycles but luggage and skis and baby buggies and whatever. It would be a whole lot less expensive than building whatever that bridge would cost. And it's something we could do, I think, immediately, and maybe it's only a part-time solution, but I would rather do that first because it solves some other transportation issues unrelated to just getting bicycles around. And it would be usable in the wintertime and in the summertime both, that people avoid putting their life at risk like Greg does riding through Shale Bluffs. So those are three different alternatives to what your proposed thing is, to me, that are viable and should be part of the, what we're looking at. The last thing I would do would be the high bridge from Brush Creek Park and Ride across to the Rio Grande. That would be like phase 4 sometime possibly in the future. But at this point, given the cost of it, there's other, lower cost alternatives that I think we should do first. And I think those should be part of the study. I'm okay like doing this study stuff going forward, but I don't think you're studying all the right things yet at this point.
Thanks, Steve. Francie.
So if you're commuting from Down Valley and you really need this section, how do you get to Brush Creek Intercept Lot? How do you ride your bike to Brush Creek Intercept Lot from Down Valley?
You drop down to Jaffe Park.
We're coming from Down Valley.
No, you have to go all the way to Jaffe Park. Because I
don't know where Jaffe Park is.
Okay, so I can
just up above the Upper Woody Creek Bridge.
Okay.
Let me.
And then you
yeah.
cross.
So you would have to go. So you see the W/J neighborhood. So the Jaffe Park, to do it without getting on a highway, you would have to drop. You would have to come all the way up to, up to. Right around, is it right around here?
Yeah, there you go, just below.
Right there. And then you drop down all the way to the river to Jaffe Park. You go across the McLean Flats Road Bridge, and then you come up the
Smith Hill.
The Aspen Mass Trail.
You're past
No,
Brush
she's
Creek.
asking
How do you
come
get
from
to
Down
the Brush
Valley
Creek
up.
Intercept Lot on your bike from
If you're
Basalt?
on the Rio Grande
I'm telling you,
Trail.
this is how you get
That's
it.
it.
I'm telling you exactly. I do it. I live in Basalt.
Okay.
You have to go.
So you
to-
go past Brush Creek.
You go past Brush Creek.
So
you-
how does this solve that problem then for people? How do they get easily to Brush Creek to keep riding
Well,
on
because
to...
right where you go down to Jaffe Park and drop over 200 feet, you go straight across on this bridge.
It's
I
at
thought
grade.
they
The
were
bridge is
confused.
at grade as opposed to dropping down to the
No,
river
I
corridor and
know
then
the
back
bridge
up
is
to
at
the
grade. How do you get to the bridge?
From
I
the
mean,
Rio
what?
Grande.
Right up a hill to get to the
The
bridge.
Rio Grande is right here.
The Rio Grande's right there.
It's right here.
On the
Rio
other
Gr-
side of the river.
Yeah, you're going up the Rio Grande this way.
Already ascended a hill to get there.
So why do you need a bridge there then? Because if the
No.
point is to get commuters to the ABC easily, what, they wouldn't ride over to Brush Creek and then ride back again.
No, we're getting people from either Snowmass or the park and ride.
So it's not about commuters from Down Valley.
ABC,
going.
it depends on where you're going. If you're going to Snowmass, this bridge is the quickest, easiest way to get to Brush Creek so you can go under the underpass under 82, because right now you would have to go to almost where this bridge is, drop, and go almost 2
understand that.
miles around.
You go to Owl Creek Road and take the Owl Creek bike path.
Well, that's way further. No, if you're coming from Down Valley,
Talking, if you're coming from Aspen, you need to get to Snowmass.
no, she was
You don't
talking
come
about
to
Down
Brush-
Valley.
I'm coming
No, but
from
you
Down
just
Valley.
brought up coming
Need a
down
map.
to get to
Need a
Brush
map.
Creek to go to Snowmass.
We're gonna need to. we're
No,
gonna need to
I don't
move
need a
along.
map. I can picture it. I just don't quite understand how many people are going to actually be coming to Brush Creek. That's my question, is how many people
Anyone
are
who
going to be
doesn't want to
coming?
go all the way into Aspen and end at the bottom of Mill Street, like if you want to go to the school, you would most definitely get on the trail that goes along 82.
And I'm
then
happy
go
to
the
sit
school.
down with you to
I
talk
think
through.
we need to
Okay,
go through.
so
There's
we
so
don't
many
need to go on
questions
over
like
this
that.
anymore. Another idea to add on to Steve's that would be less expensive but would require CDOT's cooperation is to use the 4 lanes that we have at the Shale Bluffs right now, and in the morning have 2 go to Aspen and 1 go down, and the outside lane is always a bike ride. In the afternoon, you flip it. You don't have to do any construction. You don't need any bridges. You have an entire car lane plus the verge that's on the outside there, which would be for bikers. I mean, compared to $25 million, it seems like a pretty viable solution. And there's lots of places where there's 2 lanes going one way in the morning and 1 coming out in the afternoon. So
We've had a lot of conversations with CDOT, and CDOT is not interested in doing anything with that highway, because the amount of use on that highway is huge. And you're talking, they have just not, they weren't even interested in allowing us to, they said no, because what we said was, can we shorten the lanes a little bit and put a barrier up? It would have to be a massive barrier, but a barrier up to then create a trail on one side. And they said, absolutely not.
But that was with all 4 lanes, so that there was a really small outer lane. And I know you don't want to look at any other things, but
No, I'm not.
It's just,
Do you think that's viable?
It's just not
I
viable
think
with
it's as
CDOT.
viable as 2 additional bridges over.
I
the
am
Roaring
very
Fork.
happy to, if that's the board's direction, I'm very happy to go talk to CDOT and get you an answer on that.
Okay, great.
Is that enough? Is that it?
I
I
have I made a decision? And no.
yeah, okay, I get it. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I appreciate what you said. Thank you, Patty.
My decision at this time, because it's been changing over time, I just really am concerned about the environmental impact of putting a bridge over the Roaring Fork Gorge. You know, we say, oh, we have power lines and we have this and that, but do we need to add to it? It's like people saying, why do we keep needing to add? There's already environmental degradation. Let's just make it worse. No. We have to come to a point where we say we're not going to make it worse. And putting another bridge there, and then putting another bridge up here, if anything, I could maybe support a bridge at the ABC, because it's pretty raunchy trying to get down from the ABC to the Rio Grande. Paving the Rio Grande, I think we're opening ourselves up to e-bikes and speed and accidents and a mess. But, it's my position. And spending $500,000 to further study this makes me take a deep breath when we're looking at $25-30 million project or more. So that's a tough one. I know we have to keep studying so we can come up with more ideas, but $500,000 to continue studying is a lot of money. And money that we can't always think we're going to have that filling pot of money coming in. There might be a point in time where we don't, and we have other issues and things we need to attend to. But so, yeah, putting the upper bridge over the in the, you know, from the intercept lot over that beautiful Roaring Fork Gorge. I can't, that's really a tough one for me to swallow. Really a tough one. And I'm familiar, when I was in my walking days a couple years ago before I had a medical diagnosis that kind of prohibited my walking quite so much, I found easy access. And you're right, people get lost. People get lost in town walking 5 blocks. So give me a break. Even as much signage as you can put out there, they're still lost. And so I don't know how this is they're just gonna have more trails to get lost on. But the thing is that we have a great system now from the ABC. There's a bike path right there. It's got an underpass to Owl Creek. The Owl Creek bike path is used a lot. We know that's a very popular bike path. It drops you right down into into Snowmass. You've got that trail that there's an underpass that people don't know about from the Brush Creek bike path under 82 to the Park and Ride. I mean, that's there. Most people don't even know that's there. And I just think putting in 2 bridges is just too much of an environmental impact maybe for me to swallow. And spending $500,000 between the city and the county, thank you, city, for pitching in, is a lot of money we really need to be thinking about.
Thanks, Patty.
Thanks, Greg.
I'm going to go to Kelly.
Okay. I believe that this is a legacy project that we should all be very proud to have our names inscribed on a bronze plaque at the bridge over from Brush Creek to the Rio Grande. I think that this is forward looking. I think that in 40 years, when people are using it regularly, they're going to say, I could not have envisioned this not having ever been here. And thank God for all the use that we get. And I would remind that this board supports the state's goal to reduce vehicle miles traveled by 42%. How are we going to get 42% of cars off our road, off our highway? It is going to take multiple prongs. Some are going to be inexpensive. Some are going to be expensive. This project is going to look cheap in 20 years. And we're going to wish we did it, or we're going to be proud that we did do it. And I understand concerns. We got to mitigate concerns at every turn. But I look at the Stein Bridge, which is almost at water level. Have you ever heard anybody talk badly about that bridge? Have you ever heard anybody look back at the history and said, what a crap decision they made to put that there? It's beautiful. It's accessible to the river. I'm sure it had far more environmental concern than putting bridges at the top of river expanses would. And yet we still use it, and it's still a treasure.
Joe Edwards would thank you for that.
Okay. So I would love for us to pivot on this view. I think it would be incredibly tone deaf to look at decades of studies and a recent outreach that we asked for and ignore what it's telling us. Let's respond to the people. Let's do it now when it's going to be as cheap as it's ever going to be, and it's going to advance our goals as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Greg, I must make a comment, if you don't mind.
Please
You know,
do.
Patty, I'd love if you didn't, because you always do this to me. Always have to have the last word after me.
I'll give you the last
Excuse
word.
me, then I
after.
won't say anything. I'll just sit quietly in the corner.
Steve, you've already said your piece.
How many people in here get vertigo when you're on a little narrow bridge in a really high space? I personally would not want to go across that bridge.
Have you used the Tyack Bridge?
I've been across the Tyack Bridge maybe twice in my life, and even the Tyack Bridge. If you get vertigo in high places, that's scary.
Guy, so you know.
How many people are actually going to go over that?
I think can I make a comment?
Sure. Go ahead.
I just wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Kelly said, and one of the pieces, and I can't remember if it was in this forum with all of you or not, so I apologize if I'm rehashing it. But one thing that we talked about was, that the bridge here, I always forget which is what, the Castle Creek Bridge is going to have to be replaced from Highway 82 at some point in time in the perhaps not so distant future. Mm-hmm. And one of the pieces that we had talked about in kind of bolstering this decision is that people are going to get to Brush Creek and then need to get into town, and they're not going to be able to do it in their car or on a bus because it's just going to be impossible, not just for that construction, but for that piece, and that this will offer an alternative for a lot of different people to use transportation in a different way than they maybe had ever thought about it. Like maybe it's just not, you know, your average commuter who loves biking and stuff like that. They're going to get on an e-bike, and it might not be somebody who's super savvy on that, but they can get from Down Valley up to Brush Creek, get on an e-bike, and be into town in 20 minutes. When if they had to, you know, either sit in traffic or ride a bus, you know, potentially for this, you know, construction period would probably be 45 minutes to an hour, you know, and that's going to be probably several years of construction to get that type of piece in. And then maybe you've transferred that person from being a solo person in a car to being like, oh, I really enjoyed this commute. That was really nice. Maybe that is, you know, like we talked before, your exercise and your commute at the same time, but in a different fashion that maybe some people don't usually do, you know. So it's just another future alternative, and I think vision for somebody.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm going to cut this short. I came with a lot of reservations about this, but I heard so many new ones from different fronts on my board that I don't think I need to articulate them right now. But what I really want to do is continue this. I don't think we're ready to make a call right now on this. I don't think my board is going to get there. That's my interpretation. And so I would like to have another opportunity to discuss it further with more time. I'm feeling pressed now because we're 20 minutes behind schedule. But I have serious reservations about timing, cost, all those things, some of which have been brought up already, some haven't. I appreciate Kelly's concern. I know people in my family would love to have that bridge for reasons that they share with her. But I'm not sure we could spend the rest of the day, you know, arguing about this. I feel as if we could probably all benefit from more conversation and explanation from you on how this worked. I think the survey I'm glad you did it. The presentation today felt a bit like a sales pitch. I'm not sure it was completely objective, and I'll just have to say it. I'm not particularly trusting of what I'm hearing. Some of it doesn't make sense. Some of it makes sense. But just the way you present information creates a certain, you know, clearly it's done for a purpose. And I would dispute some of the things. I'm not going to go into it now. I want to continue the conversation and give us all a chance to get through it, because I can imagine myself getting to yes on this someday. I'm just not there yet. I want to go through all the concerns that everyone has brought up regarding this. And yep, it takes a long time to get these things done. We all understand that. So I hope that's okay with all of you.
I appreciate that, Greg, because I'm not ready to make a decision either. I was, you know, I thought the presentation was great, by the way. I have some questions about the surveys, because I think mostly it's people who ride bikes that answered the survey. But so I would love to have some more time to think about it and talk about it and hear more from you, hear what Patty might have said at that point. And I really would like you to walk me through how this is going to allow Down Valley bikers, particularly construction workers who we know make up a lot of it, how they're actually going to get on a bike and ride their bike now because there's a bridge and that kind of stuff. So I would appreciate more time, and I appreciate your suggesting that.
Okay.
And I would suggest, I mean, it helped me years ago. I rode my bike, I walked all over through Chaffee Park and both sides of the highway, and I looked at all the stuff, and it really helped me to get the visual picture.
Yeah,
So a site visit, if you could put flags at the terminuses of the proposed bridges as you would see them right now, and
I'll take you on a bike from my house to Amy's house, and you can get that.
I think that would be really useful for all of us, and maybe when there's a little less snow, or, you know, less mud and more dry.
So I interpret this as direction to come back to us, or
I would love to have it at a public hearing too, so the public can weigh in too,
Sure.
because,
That's
I
a
mean,
good idea.
the only reason why
Public
staff is
comment.
here today, we wouldn't be here if we didn't hear what we heard. I mean, honestly, you told us to do a public engagement. when we do public engagement, if we heard negativity and we heard lots of people going, no, 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 we wouldn't be here. So we're here because of what we did and what we reached out and what we heard. So I'd love at least then to put it out as a public hearing, because I'd like some, we do this a lot where the public can at least come in or be on Zoom to give you their thoughts. Because yes, it comes from staff. Kathleen's a paid consultant by us, so you might not trust her either. But the reality is the only reason I'm here is because we got the support we got from this process.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you. I know it sounds like we have a majority in the community who've responded to your survey in the affirmative. But still, I think we all have questions. So they're going to have to forgive us. We're going to continue to consider this. And
No, I think they would
that's
be
fair.
appreciative if you gave them a chance to at least talk to
Yeah.
you before you made a decision.
We've already had people
I agree with
asking
that.
to comment, and,
Right.
and I
And,
put
you
them
know-
off till a future meeting. So
And also, I just, we've been talking about this for a long time. This is not the first time we've talked about it, And so, yes, I am slightly influenced by the comments from the public, although, as I said, I have some questions about how many construction people answered that survey because they just weren't paying attention. They don't pay attention to OST necessarily, that kind of thing. But we have talked about it a lot. And I would say we're probably a little further along this time than we were the last time. The last time it was pretty hard resistance. So,
No, I mean, for
cracks
us,
in the door.
that's all I wanted from this one is to go either yes or continue the conversation. A no would be difficult because of all the public support you got without listening to the public. I would say at least do one more meeting, but the continuing conversation, this is a huge project. This is a long-term project. And so in the end, if you want more information, you want more, public input and others, we can do that.
Great. I would ask my board, because we're kicking it back to Gary and his staff, let's articulate our questions, write them down, and have something so we can really move forward in the next meeting. In advance of the next meeting, let's articulate our concerns on paper at least, and share those so that we can go through. Because I think I've got a list, and I'm sure everyone else
Both
might as well.
questions and suggested alternatives that I heard. Yeah,
Okay,
so
yes,
both of
thank
those
you.
written down.
Questions and suggestions. With that, I'm going to close this out because we're going to keep moving. Thanks, Kathleen.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
coming.
thank you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. back. Yeah.
Thank you, Gary.
I'm
To
going to
adjourn.
call that progress.
Amy is moving to adjourn our meeting. Michael, second?
Thank you for staying.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.
Nice try.
So Greg,
Yeah.
we need to switch out this laptop.
Okay, go right ahead. We're going to take a short break, 5-minute break. Hello, everybody. We're back for the work session. This is in one corner. We've got, let's see, we've got Ann Driggers and then Liz coming in. In the other corner, we've got the formidable county commissioners who say no to everything lately.
Especially things that staff promotes.
Especially
which
things
they
that
love
staff
that.
spends hours and years working on.
my
It's we're going to go to the
Bag.
Colorado carryout bag fee, and this better be good and short.
It's very confusing.
Okay, here we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Driggers, Chief Financial Administrative Officer, and with me is Liz Woods, Finance Director. We've worked on this together, and I'm just going to kick it off and give a brief overview of the issue before you, and then Liz is going to go into the details. So I'm sure you're all aware that the Colorado carryout bag fee was recently implemented. I'm sure that there have been many stores you've been into where you've now charged for using a bag. There are certain rules and regulations around which stores do this, and Liz will go into that in more detail. But the reason why we're here before you in particular is the law recently allowed this 10% fee on the bag, on bags, to be collected by local governments for certain retailers that are eligible. 60% of that fee, so 6 cents, can be turned into local governments, including the county. So we're here before you to ask if you want us to collect that fee, and also there's an option by I think July 1, you can also enact a more stringent bag fee than the Colorado carryout bag fee across the unincorporated parts of the county. So this is going to go into detail.
Quick question regarding the detail. Is it going to cost us more to collect this fee and process it than it will from what it's going to bring us? That's what I read into the packet.
We can jump right to the
Let's
finish
cut to the
of
chase.
it. We believe there's only one retailer in Pitkin County that would qualify to submit this fee to us. And
We can make $2 a year on this, I think.
probably,
Yeah.
and it would cost more for us to implement
Right.
a system to do that collection.
Who's the retailer?
Roxy's.
Roxy's.
Got it.
Got it.
That's what I was thinking. So
Because they have stores outside of Colorado.
Right.
They have one store outside of Colorado, and that's all it takes for them to have to collect based on this.
I thought there was an exemption for.
So could I ask also, if you don't mind, jump to I looked at the plastic container aspect of this, and I was really grateful to hear that, those clamshell plastic things used once and tossed, that seem to be ubiquitous, especially at the organic retailers. And are we going to be getting rid of those in this regulation?
So
Slightly different from what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that's what was kind of confusing about both of these House bills, and this particularly the first one, is that it had multiple pieces to it, and one of the pieces was that yes, as of January 1st of 2024, retailers are not allowed to use single-use polystyrene containers anymore. If they had some in stock, they could use them through a certain amount of time, but
they use
they are
them up.
So they can use them up.
So
Basically.
they all stocked up at the
But
end of the year.
but I mean, if you go, I'm not sure how many of you have gotten takeout food in the Upper Valley or in Picken County, but like I really haven't seen a lot of those at most places recently, at least.
And that's the styrofoam?
That's the traditional styrofoam.
You
Yeah.
mean the little containers of food or the bags that those containers go in? Clamshells?
It's the, sorry, I'm forgetting the word.
Styrofoam?
Styrofoam, thank you.
Those are going
The
in.
real word that we're used to.
Clamshell thing that closes.
Yes.
Yeah.
This little timeline here kind of gives you
Right.
little pictures of what everything looks like. So
Yes.
Yeah, we had that, I saw
the
that.
clamshells were banned on January 1.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Now
They
back
have
to
till
the
like July or
bags.
something. to
And
use
that
them
has
up.
nothing to do with any regulations that we are putting into place. That is a statewide mandate that was part of that first House bill. All that we are asking for Picken County consideration is what to do with the 10 cents that is currently being collected by retailers. They've had to collect it since January 1st of 2023, actually. But they were able to keep that fee due to the second House bill, which was the 23-1285. They can keep that until we put something into place, whatever that is. So either we say continue collecting it and you will use that fee and they have to use it according to the House bill regulations, or we put in a program that we start to collect it and we have to put a program into place to collect it because we do not currently have a program. We do not collect our own sales tax. The state of Colorado does that. The state of Colorado has said they will not collect this bag fee on our behalf, so we would have to basically come up with a whole new system and time and audit and
And we'll
all
need
these
at least
things.
an FTE for that.
Yeah.
So your recommendation, if I can cut to it, would be the retailers will retain the full 10% and have a statutory obligation to use it for waste diversion programs and related outreach or the purchase of reusable bags, which are the same uses for the fee the county's already authorized.
Correct.
That's what you're recommending. Okay, Patty had a question.
Yeah, in the future, if the environment of retail in Picken County was to change dramatically, and we saw there was a financial benefit to Picken County, not a financial loss, could we then bring it back? Or then one time you make your decision, you stick with it?
It would just, we'd have to do an ordinance to
So we
change
could-
it. Yes, we could change it in the future if we wanted to.
I'm just saying, I want to make sure if that door's closed for good, but it's not.
No, so July 1, you were permitted to implement a more stringent program than the
Right.
Colorado.
I'm talking
carry out
5
bag
years from
fee.
now,
So
if we
you-
had a growth of small retail businesses that,
If the law doesn't change, then after July 1, you can do a bigger program if you wish.
or we could come back in and say we are now going to collect because we now see that it's not a financial loss for the county.
But I will just put a caveat on there is that we still have to follow the same rules of spending those funds
Right.
as
I understand
the
that.
retailer has to. So,
So-
like we wouldn't be able to get it and just use it for
No,
anything.
I don't necessarily have a problem with that.
just wanted to
I have
make
a
sure.
problem with one business and the cost for us to collect from that costing us more money than the gain. And it's one business at this point, but in the future we might have 10 businesses, which we don't know if we will or won't, but probably we won't. But just to make sure we still have that opportunity in the future. Because I'm comfortable just letting Roxy's keep the money as long as they're having to use it to promote the use of more than one-time use plastic bags, etc. Education. et cetera.
And I did communicate with Roxy herself, and she's aware of us coming before you with this recommendation. She said that she agrees completely with it and is aware of the regulation.
Now, are you looking for us to give you thumbs up? It's a work session, right? So
It's on our agenda for next week.
it's going
A
to come
regular
back.
Well, that was if you decided to move forward with an ordinance to, and that's another question before you, essentially, is exempting sales tax on the carry-out bags. And Pickens County doesn't exempt sales tax on anything. So that would mean that everybody would have to then exempt the sales tax from
Your
just the
recommendation
bags
is
and
no.
nothing else.
Your recommendation is not to do that.
No.
Thank you. Okay, Kelly has a question.
Yeah, I just wondered, why wouldn't Jedediah's be?
They're a food establishment, and so food establishments are exempt. So there's a list on page 2 or 3.
Yeah.
They're also a store,
Just
just like Roxy's.
But they're a restaurant.
Now, they are moving toward more sustainable packaging, I believe.
But they have moved towards
They
it.
have, okay. Yeah, I thought they
But they're
told us that,
exempt from
Bamboo, it's
they're
all
exempt from
compost.
this Colorado bill.
which is
so-
wonderful. I applaud them for doing that and everyone else who does it also.
So
Do
we
you
don't
think
need
our
an
sales
ordinance or.
tax is gonna be from plastic paper bags?
$4. Okay. Do you have any other questions for us? Because I'd love to move this on and get us back on
But,
schedule.
so you want to hear from us that we really don't want to do this?
You don't want us to do anything more.
Yes, I don't want you to do anything more.
Nor do I.
So there's the question of the sales tax on the carryout bag fee,
Yep.
which, do we have to make an official decision to not?
Only if we want to exempt it. And my recommendation, even though I didn't write it, is since you already collect sales tax on absolutely everything and don't exempt anything else, then I wouldn't create an exemption just for the paper bags.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that you've got, do you have
I have a really quick, so I would request that you take this off our agenda for next week and the
I
second
will.
reading the
I was
following.
going to
Thank
do
you.
that
Good
as soon as I
suggestion.
Our
can.
next meeting
Saved
is
us
a
some
big
time.
meeting, and it would be nice to have one thing off the, thank you.
Right, okay.
So one more thing, I remember being in Germany back in 50 years ago, let's see, was it 50 years ago already? When I was in the Army in Germany, and they came out with plastic bags, and they were the most amazing thing that I just couldn't believe my eyes. And in Germany, they made really good, pretty strong plastic bags that were more akin to our reusable ones that people are using now. And you would never think of throwing one of those away because it was so amazing.
Do you still have yours?
Well, I think it got thrown away a long time ago, but
are you leaving us?
to me, that perception
Rich
of
is here.
plastic
Online.
bags,
Got
how
it,
it
okay.
was such a miracle
Great,
when they
thanks.
first came out, and how it's
Good luck.
like
Right.
so different now is a big contrast.
Little tour. Oh, me too.
So,
tour.
I guess.
Okay, thank you. I think you've got direction and we're going to do nothing.
Awesome. Thank you.
We're good at that. Okay, moving right along. Thanks for coming in. And so Rich is online, I'm told. And
Thank you,
let's
guys.
fly. Yeah, thanks for coming and thanks for your patience. And don't look so scared next time. Exactly. We have to moderate our behavior according to Ann Driggers. Joint meeting with the Airport Advisory Board, PREP. Okay, Rich, we're feeling a little punchy here today.
You all are a little spicy today. You've had quite a day.
Yep, we have.
We're gonna go, no.
Whatever it is you're asking for. Okay.
Not me, I'm not, I'm
She's
on
a
this
yes.
side of the
She's a
table.
unequivocal yes. We're all no's. Okay, whatever the question. Go ahead.
Well, this shouldn't take too long. We just wanted, this particular item was just kind of a quick conversation. We do have an upcoming joint meeting with the Airport Advisory Board. And from a planning perspective, I think really kind of what we're looking at least from the staff's perspective for this joint meeting, is to certainly debrief. I know that Patty and Francie were in DC
They would need to debrief. We're hoping both boards at the same time, which would be helpful, getting the information all at once in the same room. So that's going to be great. And we can also recap the FAA again if we need to go back and get any more clarification there. But I think from our perspective, if we can come back and talk about those points of concern that we have heard from the FAA and then whatever was found out in DC. And it really is, from our perspective, at least right now, it looks like it surrounds the tower and those midfield crossings. The others have seemed to kind of at least be somewhat mitigated through the presentation that we did with the FAA. So we do have a couple of sticking points there. So I think the goal of it is to either come back, we can show some options available that we know the FAA had talked to us about, discuss those, and then get direction for further assessment or reviews. So we're really hoping it'll be a good, productive meeting, that we don't go back and rehash a bunch of stuff, that we actually get some direction to move forward. So that's, from our perspective, that's kind of where we're at, but certainly open to your viewpoints and your thoughts on this.
Great. Thanks, Rich. So it sounds like the debrief from DC, the two issues regarding options from the FAA, regarding tower location, or and then
Midfield crossing.
midfield crossings. And it sounds like if they're even still contemplating that, or is it?
They haven't made a decision.
They haven't
yet.
decided yet. Okay. Steve may have a question for you.
So, yeah, without knowing, I mean, it would help me to come up with questions if I already knew what what you had learned in Washington, D.C. on the trip. But my thought about, just to say, because I'm not going to be at the Airport Advisory Committee meeting next week, but if we move the runway 80 feet to the west, both those issues go away. There would be no midfield crossings unless we still wanted to put some planes over there. But we'd have more room on the east side to put planes in that case. And the tower thing could stay right where it is, and the FAA would have to rebuild it whenever they need to rebuild it for technology or obsolescence or whatever the reason they would do it. So that's just my two bits that, to me, that should be considered by the two boards.
Will you have the opportunity to share financial implications of moving the tower or keeping it where it is? Because that sounds like a pretty huge ticket. That's about the equivalent of all the grant assurances.
It is. It's a big dick. In fact, John Bauer told us 120 million was his latest estimate. So I can tell you that at least right now. But yeah, Steve, I think that's what we need to talk about, because those type of changes, the way that the common ground recommendations and the resolution that you guys have set in front of staff as our guidelines, says that if we do alter from those, that we need to come back and have these kind of conversations. And so, we're at a point now of starting to discuss those based on at least the information that we have. But that's where that's where I think it's going to be good to get both boards together and just really talk some of these details.
And we're not talking about changing something that's already been based on previous information. We're looking at new information which has changed the entire scenario, as I interpret it. So I look forward to hearing that from you. Patty, do you want to add something? No. Okay. Kelly, do you want to add something? Francie had to leave temporarily, but I think that's great. And I don't know what else we have for questions for you, but to have a little bit more, whatever you can share with us before then, just so we come prepared with questions, would be great.
I do have
We
one.
would be happy to do that.
And Patty, go ahead.
Rich, as part of the packet, can we have a copy of the resolution we passed about common grounds? Just so everybody has it.
Absolutely.
I think that would be good
That's
information
good.
to have before us. And any information we might have about the existing, already approved ALP. If there's
Okay.
anything brief, so we just have that.
Right, very useful.
comparison.
Now also, comparison, yeah. You also, I think we mentioned we had some other guests coming, like people from the actual, the original plan. Is John Bennett going to participate in this one, or I wasn't sure if he was part of that or not?
No. Everybody's, it's a public meeting, so everybody can participate.
Everybody's
for
welcome,
sure.
right.
But we don't have him on the agenda for the joint meeting, no. We were gonna have a conversation in advance with him just to, just kind of see his viewpoint on this, since he was the chair of that ASC visioning side of things.
Right. I think it would be great to invite them if it's appropriate, or if he thinks it's appropriate. I'd certainly want to make sure he understands that they would be welcome.
Yeah, he knows we're having.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great. Anything else?
That's it on there.
Boy, you didn't
Thanks,
even
Rich.
use your whole half hour, and thank you for that. You got us back on
Well, I knew
schedule.
you were trying to make up time here, Greg, so.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we're gonna keep going. You're gonna stay with us because Peacock left the room. You know, our chaperone has left, so you've got to step in.
You've got me for the rest of the afternoon.
Regarding future agendas, is there anything you want to bring up that we want to look at?
I do. There's, I've got 3 items that were listed here. One of them is possible dates for a mini retreat. John wanted me to run those by you all, and I've got the dates listed here, and it's up to you if you want to address these now, but we're looking at potentially 3 to 4 hours. The intent would be to go through the working agreements again, and then continued discussion about ballot question regarding the housing that came out of the retreat is topics. And what we're looking at is March 20th from 2 to 5 p.m., March 21st from 9 to 12, April 3rd, 9 to 12, or April 11th from 1 to 4.
I can just say for me, I'm going to be in DC on behalf of RAFT on the 19th, 20th, and 21st.
So is Francie, right?
And Francie will be there as well, so that counts us out.
April 3rd works for me.
April 3rd is looking pretty good, and the other April dates look okay for me also.
April 3rd and April 11th seem to look okay for.
April 11th, depends on when it is. You said afternoon?
April 11th is 1 to 4.
Yeah.
Let me just go check that one.
That's not going to be good.
11th, that's a
I'll be
super
at
busy day.
CCI.
Yeah, that's a super busy
Oh,
day.
the
I have Board of Health
11th?
meeting then.
The 11th?
11th is out
When's your Board
Okay.
of Health meeting?
on the 11th,
At what time?
1 to 3:30.
Because I have my doctor's appointment with Dr. Giesel at 10:30 in the morning.
Oh, yeah, she'll be able to make the meeting unless you have a long appointment. I'll tell her
How
to
sick
hurry
do
up.
you plan to be? No.
Otherwise, she might be late.
Right.
So are we looking at the
If
3rd?
I
then?
think the 3rd is
Sickness
our best,
line.
that's the first Wednesday, so there's no regular meeting, and I have
Right.
nothing on my calendar now for that.
So I think for me, the 3rd is the best of those
3rd.
options, or almost
Patty, 3rd, okay?
the
Right
only
now,
one.
yeah, I'm planning a trip, but I have to see if I can plan it around that date.
I'm always planning a
I
trip.
do have jury duty on April 1st, which who knows if it's,
Sounds like a joke to me.
Yeah, yes.
I might or might not be there on the 3rd, but
If you
chances
show up, are you a
are,
fool?
chances
If you
are
don't
the
show up-
trial's canceled. I don't have to do anything.
Mini retreat on April 3rd is, I'm going to put in tentatively.
Yeah, and if, I'll just keep John updated if something comes up.
And what time of day would that be?
It's 9 to 12.
9 to 12.
Got it, excellent. Thank you, that was easy.
Well, thank you. That was nice working through those. So the next item, Leslie Lamont has provided some dates for a site visit, Jakeman Creek, Jakeman Creek. Is it Jakeman? Jakeman
That's
Creek?
up the frying pan?
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
that will be later in spring, so we're not in the mud?
Well, here's the dates. That works for the property owner, and I don't think these are later on. This is Monday, March 25th, Thursday, March 28th, Friday, March 29th. I got 2 more for you. Tuesday, April 2nd, or Friday, April 5th.
Tuesday, April 2nd, we have a work session.
Is there one on the 2nd?
Yeah.
The March ones are tough because I have spring break and my kids
Oh,
don't
right, you've
have
got spring break
school.
then, right.
And the 28th, I'm out.
So we'll do it in
Is
April?
April 5th?
April 5th, does that seem to be?
April 5th looks pretty good.
That gets us later into the season because I'm good on the 25th of March or April 5th.
okay?
Why don't we, if we can schedule April 5th, we'll go from there.
That, let's see, 25. I think the April 5th would work best for me.
And what time you want to go, in the morning?
We'll have to see what Leslie.
Well, they do, it does say here that it's about an hour travel time each way and 45 minutes on site.
we leave at
April, we'll
9?
see, snow boots are required and possibly snowshoes or cross-country skis.
Well, since I don't do either, I'll
could do it in
make the hot
June.
chocolate and bring the marshmallows.
I got extras, Patty, if you want to.
I've tried it, and especially after tweaking my knee
I'd be
yesterday.
happy to do it in June.
When we could go fishing.
Okay.
Will the Eagle Commissioners be along on this? Is that the plan, or is it just for us?
I think it's
You
just.
know, Steve, it doesn't say, but I can certainly check on that for you.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. So that's our tentative for now, right?
Okay, April 5th, tentative date for that site visit.
Save the
And
date
instead
on
of
it.
snowshoes, you may need mud shoes, so we'll see. We'll keep you posted on
Okay.
that. And then the last one is the City of Aspen's asked to cancel the joint meeting originally in April. Not sure if John's had a chance to share that with you at all, but City of Aspen was asking if there's enough interest for an agenda. If so, maybe May's a better time. So we'd
What's the date
throw
in
that
May?
in front of you as well.
Does they have a date in May yet?
It just says May. There's no date selected.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it depends. I have a couple things, so there are meetings in May, but we'll have to see what they come up with.
Okay, we can get back to you on a more specific date, but it sounds like you're okay with the cancellation. It was set for April 16th. So that will clean up that side for you, and then we'll look for something in May.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
That work? And that's all I had.
That's all
Greg.
you have.
Thank
I just have future agendas. Just want to remind the board that on the Wednesday the 13th, I anticipate currently that a school teacher and her class are coming in third grade class in, and they want to come and talk to us. I've told them they get 3 minutes each, and there'll be 2 or 3 kids.
Okay, did you notice the agenda for that day?
It's a busy day, yep.
We'll be there
So
until
they'll be
the
here for public
14th.
comment. Steve won't be here, he'll miss it.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about. If I
You're
can
gonna check in.
if I can catch the 7 a.m. Mustang at Union Station on Wednesday morning, I'd be back to Glenwood at 10:55.
Wow.
I think what I would do is park myself at a library with my computer and just zoom in.
So you can zoom and be part, because I really love you to be there for the
We have a lot
energy
of big
code.
issues on
Yeah,
that day.
There's a lot going on.
Because,
Energy rock.
looking at the agenda, I really need to be there for as much of it. The alternative would be if I caught the next Mustang bus after that, I would get to Glenwood at 1:45, which I would miss the first part of the meeting, but I could be there for the duration of it. But I'm gonna aim for being at Union Station at 7 a.m. and doing that.
Great, thank you for that.
And that the road will be open and.
I
the
know, I
path
get a
will be
lot of
open.
busting,
Mustang,
delayed notices.
Wi-Fi busting.
Good luck.
I see a letter from us to Will Tour Energy Office, and
It's for open discussion.
and this is for open discussion. Okay, so we'll keep moving till we get there, right? Okay, that's it for future agendas. Thank you all. So now, we are 5 minutes ahead of schedule, I'm proud to say.
I am amazed. You pulled it off, right?
And that's because I rushed rigorous. Did you see that?
No, it's because we had to pee on the run.
Oh, that. Okay, up next is the APSHA policies and update discussion. Matthew is here. Ashley's here. Oh, Ashley's somewhere, or not.
She's not here, but Matthew can.
Okay.
I can
Why don't
take
you guys
those.
come on down?
Yeah.
Come on up and join us at the table.
So as you all may recall, there was discussion among this board about wanting to allocate a little more time than our board report time towards APSHA updates, because I was taking up a big chunk of time with all that, and we thought a quarterly
That'd be great. Thank you.
Update would provide more information and give this board an opportunity to have some discussion around forthcoming regulatory items or issues that you all are hearing about APSHA that you wanted to bring to my attention. And so Ashley carved out the time, invited Matthew and Liz to be here to help clarify anything I might say, but I'm gonna sort of take it and present, and hopefully they will, we'll have a good discussion. So I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see. There we go. This out of the way. Okay.
Abby, I see you
There you go.
chuckling.
Okay. So here's just a little bit of an agenda of what I hope to cover in the next 45 minutes, and maybe we'll finish even earlier. But we receive at the APSHA board quarterly reports on data about the program and all of the things that APSHA manages and administers. So I pulled out some of that data to give just a high-level summary to you all that I thought you might find of interest. I'm going to give an update on the right-sizing pilot program, the capital repair program that we funded to the tune of $200,000. I'm going to talk just a little bit about a rental study RFP if we have time, and then just raise some items for discussion that have come up at the APSHA board level related to how the rules, while the rules themselves are consistent, the outcomes for people who are either renting or owning are experienced differently. And so that's come up for discussion at the board. We don't have any regulatory changes in front of us right now, but I wanted to put those in front of you and get some input. And then if there's anything you all want to tell me, I'm open to it. Okay, so here's the total inventory of what APSHA administers. So 3,213 units. And you can see how that breaks down into ownership units versus rental units. I will say there is like a small number of other that I wasn't going to explain very clearly, but it's about less than 100. And then there's also some music room rentals that APSHA administers at Meroltz that aren't wrapped on the page right now. And then as you can see, the number of units that are within City of Aspen limits are 2,400. So about 2/3 of the inventory. And I'll just pause if there's any questions, jump in. Year over year, so our last quarterly report was looking back at the entire year, and I thought that would be more interesting to you all than just from Q3 to Q4. And so in 2023, APSHA processed 1,000 more applications than the year prior. And this was done without bringing on additional qualification staff. They did this with current staffing levels and by drawing on expertise from people like Cindy and Bethany, who have other jobs but help out on these things when needed. And this was driven by the Burlingame 3 lotteries.
Question, Kelly?
Steve, yeah, go
How
ahead.
come there are twice as many bids than applications?
So people get an application approved and then they can bid on any open lottery. So you see there's 44 listings. So at least some of those 1,000 households who had a qualified application bid on more than one of the 44.
Okay.
And in those 44 listings, I don't think that's a totally accurate number because the way the Burlingame lotteries were run is they did multiple units in a single lottery. So they would do like 3-bedroom category 3s for multiple buildings in one lottery. And then those lottery winners would, based on whatever number they chose, like choose which unit out of those buildings they preferred. And so 44 is actually less than the total universe of the number of units that were actually out for bid in 2022.
By what percentage? Just wondering.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there was 79.
There was 79
Was there
duty-free.
32 Burlingame
it was-
lotteries?
we did it by building,
Mhm.
by address, excuse me.
Got
So it was basically the building, but that would have usually have two different buildings attached to unit under one address.
Okay, great, thank you.
And just to sort of think ahead, that some of that is causing churn in the system, right? People who've been in other APSHA units are now moving into Burlingame units, and so their units are coming open and up for bid or up for rental as well. So APSHA's moving through the process of that churn. And then this is how in 2023 the categories were distributed. And again, some of this has to do with Burlingame 3, some of this has to do with just the category assignments that other units that came up for sale had. And you'll see it's sort of generally a bell curve. There's a lot more in category 3 and 4. And if you recall, many of the RO units, this doesn't indicate that there were no sales of RO units. A lot of those units don't have to go to a lottery. So North 40, Lazy Glen, Aspen Village, they can enter into a one-to-one contract with a person who's qualified. They don't have to put it out for they don't
They
have to
can
go
choose the
through
buyer.
APSHA. Yeah, they can go to APSHA and for the lottery, but on those older deed restrictions, it's not required. And then this, let me see, did I skip a page? I thought I included bedrooms in here, but maybe I missed that. I meant to include sort of a bedroom distribution for you all too, and I can pull that up if that's interesting. So this just is sort of some high-level information as well. So I thought this was interesting that 3/4 of the bids are from households that don't have any dependents. So childless, essentially. And then the average work history is still quite long for people who are winning. And if you recall in our regulations, folks who have lived, who have worked in Pickens County for qualified employment, up to 20 years get additional bids in the lottery. So they have sort of a preferential placement in the lottery process up to 20 years. So people are living and working here for a long time before they're winning these units. Any questions on all that, on that data? There's a whole report I could send you if you
Just
want
tell
to
me
dive
about the
into
20
more
years
about it.
again. If they've been here 20 years, they get additional options, or if they've been, you said up to 20 years?
Up to 20 years. So if you've worked here for 30 years, you're only going to get so many additional lottery chances up to the 20 years.
Got
you
it.
don't,
Okay.
It doesn't go beyond that up to 30 and 40 years
You
of
get,
employment.
after 4 years, work
20 is the
history.
cap,
Yeah.
the peak number
Right.
of additional
And it
bids.
kicks in at after 4 years of work history.
There would be actually a good, if someone's worked for closer to 30 years, they're not gonna be around for as long working, and you don't really want them moving into a house long-term and retiring after working just a few more years. Would be a disadvantage.
You have to work how
You have to
long?
work
And the
10
turnover's
years. You have to work.
Hmm?
You have to work
Work
10 years
after you
before
move
you can
in. You have to
retire
work
into
10
the
years
unit.
before you
Before
can retire.
And that used to be 4. So we did
You've
kind of
increased
create a longer requirement for the program in the last couple of years.
Okay, right sizing.
So right sizing. So this is, it's still a pilot program, but as you may remember, we did some analysis 2 years ago, I think, that really looked at the ownership units, and based on the affidavits that come in every 2 years, what the efficiency of the use is in the occupancy of the units. And we found that out of the 1,500 ownership units or so, some of them have empty bedrooms. And that was to the number of 500. We found that there was about 500 empty bedrooms. On the flip side of that, we didn't report out how many shared bedrooms are happening. So it's not necessarily, there could be we could be 100% efficient in terms of like housing the number of people to the number of bedrooms, but that's not what we looked at. And so then APSHA created a survey and sent it out to the owners to say, like, what would kind of inspire you to right size or go into a smaller unit that fits your household number more accurately. And we've talked about those responses before, but what we decided to do was develop a very narrow pilot program to see kind of what is the minimal we might be able to do to encourage people to right size without putting money towards it right now or without having a ton of additional incentive towards it. And we did have to change the regulations because this is a preferential treatment outside of the ordinary lottery process. So we made those changes in the regulations, and in the last few months, what has happened is two families have found each other and entered into an application together to APSHA to request approval to go outside the lottery process and essentially swap their homes.
Just do swaps. Got it.
So what happened there was a family of 5 moved out of a 2-bedroom in Burlingame into a 3-bedroom home up by Highlands, and an older gentleman with a younger kind of college-age dependent moved into their 2-bedroom home. And they were able to qualify for that. He was able to qualify because it's number of occupancy plus 1 additional spare bedroom was how we initially defined the pilot. Because we understand that, you're not always going to get a couple moving from a 3-bedroom to a 1-bedroom, right? Maybe they want to have a spare bedroom or office or something. So that has gone through successfully, and they came to our board, and we're very grateful for that. I've seen other people starting to put together flyers to
do swaps.
Yeah.
Now, that's overseen and regulated to some extent, so you don't have a cash transaction.
Right, we really don't want that.
Yeah, and that is that is prohibited in the rules of APSHA.
Greg's always
They're
keeping his
just
eye on
doing
that.
Yeah.
They're buying each other's
Yeah.
homes,
Yeah.
essentially.
Got it.
And then when the city was figuring out how they wanted to lottery out Burlingame, they decided to put a couple of units aside for a right-sizing opportunity. So a family would get preference for a unit in right-sizing. And so that happened with 1 unit where a couple did move from a 3-bedroom to a brand-new 1-bedroom unit in Burlingame.
Is there, question, Kelly, is there an opportunity for the APSHA staff to be a clearinghouse for, if someone wants to swap, they just put their name on a list at your office saying, I have a 2-bedroom, I want to swap?
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion about that, and we elected not to at this juncture just because it would be so staff time heavy. So, it's something we might want to consider later on if this program gets a bit of momentum, but we had extensive discussions on that, and we decided we do have a list, but we don't kind of do the matching up. They have to
So
find.
can other people searching, can they look at the
Yeah.
list and pick somebody?
But they.
Okay, so it's still up to them
people,
to find the match, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're not matchmaking.
And I will say, APSHA gets a lot of requests to act like a clearinghouse for a number of things, such as like all the rental properties in the valley, or in the county.
Right.
And the way that they do that is really just provide contact information for the housing that's not within APSHA.
Is there an online listing, I was thinking about it, like the marketplace, sort of online marketplace that could help with that? Like maybe you could even use Facebook Marketplace and not need to build a website or something.
For the right sizing.
Just so you could have that ability to get in and look and see what's available and add your name and ask questions.
I don't think we're quite there yet, but it's something we'll definitely be keeping in mind. This really was a very let's test the waters and see what it's.
I think it's really
and
very
as you
limited.
recall, there was some discussion at our joint meeting with the city about let's throw money behind this. I think Ward said $300,000 a bedroom or something like that. So I do think there is some interest to figure out how to flesh this out.
Right.
It's not even been a
great.
year. It's only been a few months. We did recently change the regulations to make it just a little simpler in terms of occupancy, where the goal is just net bedroom gain, not necessarily maximum bedroom gain.
Right.
So again, getting for someone to go from 3 to 1, maybe they can go from 3 to 2.
That's still a plus.
It's
Yep.
still a plus.
Great.
Or like 4 to 2 instead of,
Well, thank you for showing that. That's good, good work. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And then this is some information on our repair program. Thank you, Liz, for sharing your slides with me. I just pulled them from her slides today. And this is a little bit outdated, I think, but as you all remember, we prouded the city to up their ante to match our $200,000 for essentially essential capital repairs or emergency repairs on the insides of units. So not really dealing with things that would implicate the HOA, dealing with things specific to a household. And so at this time, they had received 58 applications, and then that's the category distribution. 24 were approved, 30 were denied. Some of the denial reasons were incomplete applications, failure to submit a bid quote, not living in an APSHA unit, RO properties, so those were, being out of category for the qualification. So here is, average of these. A lot of things are like windows, some hot water heaters, flooring repairs. We've recently updated the program as we've learned as we've gone to expand the list of eligible improvements, again, to really be targeted towards those kind of emergency
Are you
essential repairs.
nudging them toward electrification and heat pumps versus? Good.
Yeah.
We're consulting with CORE as we go along. They've been very involved in it. They don't have a
That's
formal role, but we have a good working relationship with them,
Right.
so we've been chatting to them as we go along.
And I have known several people to participate or apply for this, and they are reaching out to CORE because they know even the rebate
Sure,
can
they can
help,
get a discount or a rebate on
defray,
something. Yeah.
costs as well.
And if they can go to a heat pump water heater, or it just lowers the utility bills and helps us move along.
And then a recent change to the program was to expand it to category 3 or category 4, because what the review of the applications was showing is that there was quite a few people living in category 3 units with category 4 incomes. So their incomes were disqualifying them, but they still had pretty expensive repairs that needed to be made, and that their matching contribution is 30% of the cost. And then I was going to look to you guys because I sort of forgot what our conversation was around emergency repairs. We looked at emergency repairs as things like a boiler, a roof caving in, immediate emergency repairs that could be approved up to $20,000 and not require a match.
And we've gone ahead and done that.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was for all categories,
Yes.
right?
So big emergencies, we will cover them no matter what. No matter what the category is. But those really are the big ones.
Yeah. And again, this is to protect the inventory and ensure its maintenance. Any questions about those?
No, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, and then these are just some of the issues I've flagged for conversation, and maybe we'll be done pretty quickly. But anyway, so some of the things that have come up just in discussion, and I think Ward and John brought a few of these up at our joint meeting, but were related to, how the rules kind of look differently, whether you're a renter or an owner. For example, we changed the dependent age for when an owner wants to bid on a new unit or someone wants to bid first time on a unit. So your dependents age 19 and younger could count towards the number of bedrooms you could bid for. It used to be up to 24. That doesn't mean kids who are up to 24 can't live in your house. They can continue to live in your house. You just can't bid on a different house and have them count towards your bedroom count. Now, what this looks like for folks who are renting, they have to requalify every 2 years. So once their child ages out, they might still be going to college, but now they're risking their rental unit. because rentals require maximum occupancy. So there's not really situations where somebody's getting approved to have a 2-bedroom if they're only a 1-bedroom or a 1-person family. So that is some fodder. And then additionally for when folks are over income. We don't change the categories for a unit. Somebody makes too much money out of that category, now they've lost their rental unit. If you own, it doesn't matter. You can continue to make as much money as you want. Once you've been in that unit, you're in that unit. There's no future qualification based on your income.
Question on when your kid turns 19 and they're going to college, you have an empty bedroom then for a good part of the year. And I don't think the APSHA rental person would be allowed to rent that to a non-family member, like sublet it to a housemate. Is that possible?
There is capacity to do roommates if they qualify under APSHA, but not subletting as such. So there's they'd have to qualify through APSHA.
Through APSHA.
Yeah.
But they could live there and fill that bedroom, which if someone wants to keep living in their rental unit, that might be the only option to keep it.
You can come up with a roommate situation.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, so affordability standards. So this came up again in our joint meeting. Ward had presented like a heat map of sort of looking at what the actual unit rental is by bedroom and what that cost of rent would be associated for that, and whether that fits within kind of the 30% monthly income or if somebody is cost burdened or not. And something that's been on APSHA's plate for a long time, which I've brought up with you all in the past, is trying to create more of an affordability standard of how we kind of set pricing, right? So is $1,200 for a 2-bedroom, a reasonable cost in this valley based on all the other costs of living, at a certain category of income. So we've wanted to endeavor to do that work, and it has been on our work plan for the year. Now, recently, the city of Aspen is planning to issue an RFP that would do a study looking at their rental units to sort of assess are the same questions. Are those rental rates set at an appropriate level for salaries and incomes? And so APSHA thought maybe we would tag on to that study to understand it better and contribute to the cost of that. I think that's probably good. We had a good discussion at the last board meeting about this. I did sort of suggest, look at all the data that the Housing Coalition has collected, because they've done a ton of work related to cost of living for certain items and what things look like for real in the valley, and interviews with landlords and stuff like that. So it would be great to have more data. It does push off decisions about that topic a little bit late, like another year beyond what we had planned. And so in the meantime, folks may be paying more or less than what their households can absorb. So I wanted to flag that for you all.
Great, thank you.
You're okay with that? Okay. And then another thing that's come up in discussion, and we haven't really flagged this for our work plans right now, but it's something I've thought about a lot, is when you look at ownership units, everyone's capped, right? So a unit might be a category 3 unit that is selling for the first time in 30 years. So it's selling based on a price that was set 30 years ago and a 3% cap. That price is often low, like say $140,000, for a multi-bedroom unit. Whereas that person's category, they should ostensibly be able to afford much more than that. If they were bidding on a brand new category unit in their category, they would be paying, $100,000 more, if not more. And so there's just a there is a big disparity between units that are new or have turned over a lot, because remember that appreciation is going to reset at the higher price every time it resells. So any next person is going to build on top of that appreciation for what they pay. And so I've kind of thought that there should be some discussion about whether APSHA should be buying those units and recalibrating the price and reinvesting that money into capital repairs or something like that. Or if there's some other mechanism, or we should reset the category unit to be lower to actually match what the price is. So it's no longer category 3 units, category 1 unit or something like that, based on, what people's incomes and affordability is now. So that also plays into a bit about the affordability standards and some of the disparities in ownership. But
So you're looking at all those options. There are multiple
we're not.
options.
I mean, we're not. That's not been. I bring it up a lot, but we haven't set that as a work plan item. I'm just sort of throwing it out there for your food for thought, and if it's something that inspires you, I can bring that back to the board.
My feeling is it seems as if there's an opportunity for a windfall that should come to APSHA or the entity, whether it's the county or the city or APSHA owning it, only because that will allow the strength of the system to increase. Does that make sense? But it'd be nice to look at both.
Yeah.
Multiple options anyway.
And I do think we could figure that. I mean, we could study that from our, we know how long units have been owned for, what their maximum resale price is at any time, right? So that's knowable.
Then you would need more money to be able to invest in those units, right?
Yeah, well, and ideally, some of the recognition is, well, it's a really old unit, it probably needs more. So if someone's buying it, then they can use that additional money to invest in it.
Right.
That's not always true. Some people have kept their units up really nicely for 30 years, and they're
So
still selling
does
them.
APSHA have first right of refusal?
Yes.
It does. Yeah. Okay. I thought so, but I wasn't. Thanks, Steve. did you
Yes,
have
so
a
there is a
question?
mechanism there.
Not a question, but one thing I just noticed in the news, it's related to housing, but not to APSHA at all, but in those Texas Panhandle fires they've had, over 500 homes have burned, and many of those homes were uninsured, which just breaks my heart that people, they just lost their whole life savings potentially in that, and I mean, I presume that all part of the ownership units, they're required to have homeowners insurance, I presume, as part of their living there.
And we are seeing insurance rates spike substantially, and that is becoming more burdensome for people.
Well, if you have a mortgage, it's required.
Yeah, if you have a mortgage.
Well, the
But then I
actual rates
wonder
are
the
going
situation
up.
in West Texas, what's going on, but
Is it possible?
it's really sad that a lot of people weren't prepared for that. And
Were they insured, and did their insurance companies drop them, as we're seeing happen across
Or did they choose
Colorado?
not to carry insurance?
Or that, but
yeah,
you can't
that
assume
could
that
have
they
been,
chose
because
not
there's
to.
a lot more grass fires out in the prairie now, as much as danger as there is wildfires in the mountains with trees. So.
Has APSHA seen homeowners in APSHA that have not been able to get insurance because of insurance companies are dropping homes in Brush Creek, I know, in certain parts of Pitkin County, and then in other counties adjoining.
We haven't found people who haven't been able to find insurance.
that hasn't
but
become a
anecdotally,
problem.
it's been harder and more expensive.
Right.
And a lot of these are in HOAs, so HOAs are having a hard time.
And a lot of them are in areas that aren't in the WUI.
I'm hearing from other commissioners
here in
across the
town.
state that this is becoming a real
Different
problem.
fire risk.
Yeah.
Not that there's not a fire risk, it's just different.
Thank
So
you.
so these are just some of the issues I wanted to flag. If there's things that are particularly hot buttons for you that you would like APSHA to be focused on, that would be helpful for me to know, or if there's others that you wish to bring up, I can be more prepared for discussion at a future update. We are not expecting any new regulatory changes coming to APSHA in the coming months. There are some other things APSHA has to focus on, like getting our website updated for accessibility standards, and we have qualifications person out on maternity leave, so staff is sort of absorbing some of that work now too. We will, I think, be getting an update on a communications plan. The city has dedicated comms resources to APSHA, which to me is a hugely meaningful and important change for APSHA to have some dedicated communication support. And so Matthew has been doing a lot with Facebook Lives and a lot of more outreach, both in English and Spanish to folks, which is great. Is there anything else you'd like me to bring to my board's attention?
Boy, it's a good
I think
download.
the other thing I would like just to flag is we're just about ready to start communicating with HOAs on the reserve study, which we're going to be paying for. We're ready to start reaching out to them probably as early as next week, and so that'll be going on all summer, and that is an opportunity for 40 or so HOAs under the APSHA umbrella to get a real hard look at the state of their capital reserve program. So that's going to be a lot of work, but really necessary work to maintain and the sustainability of the program. So that's great.
Yeah. And again, that was something the city and the county we unanimously supported as a top priority last summer at our retreat.
Does APSHA have a frequently asked questions category? If I haven't looked for it, so I don't know if you have one on your website but there are a lot of questions that pop up. Certainly criticism comes up in the community that is often so poorly researched it's barely worth a response, yet I think a response would be appropriate. And I'm, when you get, it'd be nice to have a go-to place to look at, various comments or criticisms the public have about, well, why is APSHA doing this, or why, how come this, it's such a complicated system that it's pretty hard to understand, and I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for more availability of information online, just so people can set the record straight.
We did have a Mythbusters program which we ran last year, mostly on Facebook and through social media. We are trying to tackle some of those misconceptions through more traditional media as well. If you've noticed, just this year we've had a lot more press about APSHA in the local papers. Carson, our board chair, has had 2 now pieces in the local papers, and he's writing another one. So, and also coupled with better coordination with the City of Aspen Communications Department, we are trying to address a lot of those issues, but we're not quite doing it as head-on as perhaps you'd like to do, and it's something we can look at. The website is an ongoing issue, and it's going to need major surgery, both to get it through these accessibility issues, and also later on to make it a more modern website. So we'll keep looking at that. I hope you all saw the story just yesterday about audits, and in that, we've got wonderful compliance on the ownership side.
95%?
The headline, headline wasn't wrong,
Oh.
but it's even better than the headline, because the 5% the 5% are unresolved. They're not necessarily out of compliance. So, and in that interview, I did bring up a few of the misconceptions and tried to address them. The idea that everybody's cheating, everybody's out of compliance. I was like, no, we have real hard data now which shows that isn't correct. So
that's for what percentage of respondents are you getting? Like how many responses?
Everybody has to respond.
Everyone does.
And it's very easy to do online.
Right. You don't get to say no. It's all information. It's mostly your tax information, so it's stuff you have on hand anyway. But it's been highly successful, and that'll be a year in July, so we will come back with a more formal presentation to the APSHA board, and we're happy to come see you guys as well if you want, once we have a full year of data on that.
I haven't seen Carson's op-eds, but I appreciate him doing that. I think that's great. Yeah. And one of the questions that came up was the tax thing. With the governor's, was it $55,000 tax relief, which actually changed APSHA's tax categories, and so some people's taxes actually went down while the rest of the communities went up, and that raised some eyebrows. But it wasn't explained to me until I looked into it and had to talk to the clerk's office, the assessor's office.
Out of our hands.
It's like, this isn't us. This isn't nothing nefarious. This is an across-the-board $55,000 reduction in your valuation, which is going to change your tax bill. And for the lower valuations in some affordable housing units, it's going to go down. And that's a reasonable, but it has to be explained. Otherwise, it just causes, concern.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think specific responses are necessary, but it'd be nice to have the database to understand.
That's what we're trying, yeah, great.
Thank you. This has been really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly. That was really good information, and I
always feel so rushed during our board report, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, this was, I can see why you wanted to do that.
Yeah, and if we don't, I mean, I'll work with Matthew and Ashley, and, if there's not much to report in a quarter, we don't need to have this time, but, I thought it would be
It's
good to
quite
do
useful. I find it really useful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Not for me. Anything for you guys? Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thanks,
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks for coming down. Great to see you.
Great, thanks, guys.
Rich, anything on your
Don't go
end?
anywhere, 'cause
They're
you
like,
have
now
another
remember to
meeting.
leave in a half hour, because we have a meeting.
Yeah, get out of here. Let the seats cool down. Okay, we're going to move on to board open discussion, of which I can't think of
Rich
anything.
is back.
And Rich is back. Is there any open discussion, Rich?
I believe Kara is in the room, hopefully.
She
There to
is.
discuss
Kara's in the room at the table.
Could you do that on camera for us? Turn around, face the camera.
And is John Doherty on as a panelist or okay. Well, I will try and
Uh-oh.
Do you want him to check in?
That's okay. We've been in communication. So I have a quick item for you. I think Charlotte might have handed out. You should have a letter of support before you for to the Colorado Energy Office. Corps is putting in a $1.2 million grant request to the Clean Energy Fund. There's a lot of funds.
Clean air.
Clean air. I knew I was getting close. Regarding Coal Basin, we have scheduled for the Corps, and the team is going to come and do a full update to all of you on March 26th, but this grant application is due at the end of this week. And so we've had some different back and forth of if it was a joint partnership with the county or if Corps could apply on their own. Corps can apply on their own, and so that's why you have a letter of support before you. And then, again, we'll get a full update on the 26th, but if you have any questions, I have an email and I can answer some of them.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Well written.
Of course, we're gonna
Sounds good.
support, yeah.
Okay, so I'll get your signature after this meeting and I'll ship it
Great,
off.
great.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to, I can't think of anything else other than.
Does Rich have anything else? I have one. I have one thing, just a heads up. Northwest Cog Economic Development District is having their May symposium that they do every year, and they're looking for presenters from the city or from Pitkin County. It's about some issues related to locals and visitors, and I'll get the board the information, so if you guys can think of anybody you think might be a good speaker from Pitkin County or in general, we can pass it over to Northwest Cog.
Topic of.
It's related to visitors and locals, and I can't remember what kind of nexus
How
it
to
is.
tell them
but
apart.
yeah, actually, I could probably pull that, but yeah, more or less.
How do you define a tourist?
Which one is more lost on the bike trail than the other?
If they own a giant home but they never come to it, are they a tourist or are they a local?
How about if you don't know the street names?
If you don't know the names of the streets, if you don't know where the Mountain Chalet is,
Well, I don't feel like any of the locals know the name of the streets either. That's why it's kind of misleading.
Amazing how many people don't know where they're registered to vote.
He's good.
So another topic, yesterday since we weren't meeting on Tuesday, I took advantage of the time to attend the Dr. Mack meeting. Dr. Mack is the Regional Transportation Coordinating Committee for Dr. Cog and the Denver Council of Governments, which their meetings are always when we're meeting on Tuesday afternoon. So I just attended to see what their meetings were like, and because I'm the chair of our committee here in Northwest Cog. It was very interesting. had presentations by RTD and about a Boulder area mobility project run by Boulder County. So I was really glad I had the opportunity to attend one of their meetings. I've always been curious what they do over there. And they actually have a lot of similar issues there that we have here. And one thing I really remember on the RTD presentation, they have a lot of bus routes that have a half-hour gap between rides, or some of them even an hour gap between when one ride is and the next. And they're trying to shorten that up to 15-minute headway between on as many of the bus routes as they can, which they really need more drivers to be able to do that. It sounded like really similar issues to RAFTA, what RAFTA is facing.
Right, right.
We waited, Abby and Kara and I, we waited like half an hour this morning in Carbondale. There must have been a whole bus out. Something.
Oh, it just didn't come? Oh, wow.
Must have, because I've never waited 25 minutes at 8:30, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, that's the rub, finding enough buses and then enough drivers and housing for the drivers so we can keep more buses on the road. The buses I've ridden lately have been full.
This was
and
more than
people
full.
are, standing up. We heard about the bus that did the 360 last week during the snowstorm with 10 or 11 people standing up. It did a 360 at the stoplight. And luckily everybody was okay, but that's certainly a concern.
There were lots of people.
I was just thinking, $25 million would buy 25 electric buses. Just to throw a number out there. Okay.
One other thing, Greg,
Yeah,
real
go
quick.
ahead.
Did everybody get the invitation to the elected officials mixer?
Yes. So what do we do about that? Can we all go?
We can go if we notice it.
We could notice it.
What?
It's a long way.
No, but I mean, in terms of having conversations with other elected
We
officials.
can notice it as a public meeting.
Oh, I see.
You just
Okay.
can't talk to each other. You can talk to everybody else.
I'm definitely going.
We just wave at each
But we
other.
need, I'll just let Charlotte know, let's just notice it just in case.
Don't smile.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea. I'm definitely going to go.
Kelly.
So, last Thursday, when I was sick as a dog, the Crystal River Wild and Scenic Feasibility Collaborative
right.
met for their last meeting to formalize a recommendation that will come to the elected bodies of the counties and the River District and Town of Marble and everything. And I'm very delighted. I haven't gotten the full download, but there was unanimous support for a 3-part recommendation that includes building out a framework for wild and scenic designation and working on like what a bill would include and look like. And that was not a foregone conclusion, as you all know, at the beginning of all this. And there's still a lot of thorny issues to work out, but I'm thrilled that the group said, yes, let's hammer out what a bill would look like. And so that's going to be the next phase of this, along with some other work related to, there's another recommendation related to the governments coming together on an IGA, promising no dams and diversions, as well as a potential in-stream flow right. And that we will receive that all formally signed by everybody in the group.
Great.
So I was really excited about that.
Good to hear.
I'm going to propose that we make a motion to adjourn because I've got a place to be in 25 minutes.
Yeah, he's
Let me
the
just
star
tell
of
you-
the show.
Let me just catch you up on the meeting we just
Oh.
had with the governor, who
Right.
popped in with a big smile and said, I'm going to run, but my chief of staff is here, and I'm just really excited to hear about this conversation.
Later.
So his chief of staff and like 4 other people, somebody from the Department of Homeland Security was there, and some other people, and we talked about the situation in Carbondale, and the guy from the state really wanted to know how many. Nobody really talked about how many. Elizabeth said 200, but it's not really 200, but we've had 12 to 20 up here asking for services. And anyway, it was, John Martin came on, and he was emphatic. We have no services. We will not help in any way. We can't afford to help. We don't have any money. We don't have this. We don't have that. So we are absolutely not going to help. These people were uninvited and So that was him, and then John Peacock spoke, and the guy had to go, whoa, wait a minute. John came on pretty strong. But then when John said, well, the reason I came on so hot is this, and the guy said, it's all right, I feel passionate about it too, and nothing happened. No, nothing happened.
They listened. and
No,
that's
but
it.
the chief of staff did say that he's really interested in continuing the conversation on a different level, not this whole thing with, Eagle there and everything, but probably without John there.
Isn't John Martin like descended from the Mayflower? I mean,
I don't know.
Find some irony to all this.
He's a really fun guy to visit with, let me put it that way.
Well, somebody I know used to work with him. I'm trying to remember who back in the Ely. Let Ely tell you his story because he really had admiration back
No,
when they worked
he is
together.
a really fun guy. I
Yeah.
like conversations with him when they're
John
not
Martin.
official.
Oh,
John Martin.
he stands in the back of the room when everybody's eating lunch.
His hair's getting longer.
No way. Is his beard getting longer?
His hair's been long for a long
Oh, yeah, it's longer. It was just brushed at the meeting. and it was
I'm
left
going
out
to
here.
ask for a motion. Thank you.
Okay.
We don't need
We
a
don't
motion.
need
And
a motion.
congratulations
Is it a work
to
session?
Greg
No, it's a work
for
session.
his
Patty, I
art
wanted to talk
opening.
to you about
Well,
Culver
me
for a
and
second
30
before
other
you-
people.
Yeah,
So it's
there
like
you
it's a
go.
whole bunch of community art opening
That's
this evening.
okay.
My very
Okay.
first one. Yeah.
Greg,
Great, thank you.
You got time to get to your
I
opening.
know. I'm going to get on the bus and pop down there and make the scene. It'll be fun. Am I
Snowmass
supposed
is
to
shuttle.
sign
Did
this
you
for?
get the alert? Snowmass is shuttle.